In the first days of the North Kingdom, they built a great watchtower on Weathertop. Amon Sûl, they called it. It was burned and broken, and nothing remains of it now but a tumbled ring, like a rough crown on the old hill's head. Yet once it was tall and fair. It is told that Elendil stood there watching for the coming of Gil-galad out of the west in the days of the last alliance. I'm guest co-host Josh Cook, and you're listening to the Amon Sûl podcast.
Maya Govanan, welcome to Amon Sûl, a podcast for tall hobbits with elvish aspirations, and I promise I'm going to do an extra episode just on my reflections on that line someday. But not today. I'm Father Anthony, an Orthodox Christian priest, and here we talk about the works of J.R.R. Tolkien because we love them and believe in their power to orient us toward what is highest and noblest. Today my guest co-host is Josh Cook, who is my brother, and will be familiar to listeners from our first retrospective episode back in 118, One Last Look at the Shire, as we talked about the first 5 chapters of Fellowship of the Ring together. Josh works professionally as a database manager for a small liberal arts college, while serving as a tonsured reader at Holy Ascension Orthodox Church in Albion, Michigan. He and his wife have 4 children, and his other hobbies include gardening, brewing, and home improvement. Last time, I think I said, Josh, you're something of an overgrown hobbit, but frankly, your beard game this time puts you much more in the wizard bracket. Whatever you are, welcome back to Amon Sûl.
Thank you, and I'll just respond by saying I hope not. I don't want to be neither. Yeah, thank you very much for having me back. I remember thinking this last time, and I don't think I said it. I'm a little bit in awe of being on this podcast, especially following up Brad Berzer and Cyril Jenkins and some of the other noteworthy guest co-hosts that you've had. So thanks for indulging me and letting me come on to talk Tolkien.
Well, I'd always planned to have you on, but you're one of the more consistent people that texts me when you're listening and engages a little bit. I'm like, hey, I remember that joke. It was recent, and someone is actually keeping up with me. You would. I would be bringing you on even if I hadn't planned to originally, and you've kind of paved the way for other listeners to come on too. So on their behalf and mine, thank you.
I was just going to say thanks for not mentioning that mostly what I text you is when I get the correct answers to the trivia, not when I get the wrong ones. I'm very selective.
Well, that was going to be a necessary, thing. It's a necessity anyway, because that's what brings you on to. I bring you on because you clearly want to participate in the quiz show side of things. So this time we shall see how it goes. At any rate, on our episode today, Josh and I will say goodbye to Rivendell and set out into the wilderness just west of the Misty Mountains, on our way with the 9 walkers to the various dooms that await them. But before we get to all of that, we're going to take a moment to get to know Josh a little bit more. So Josh, last time I think we discussed your answers to the normal questions, how you first encountered Tolkien as a child, it was my fault, and where you'd like to live or visit in the Legendarium when you were here before. This time I thought it might be worth talking somewhat about your return path to Tolkien in adulthood, if you really left him behind, and what that experience was like. But if you want to talk about something else, feel free.
Yeah. So again, this is something that I thought about bringing up last time I was on here, and this is something that I've been mulling over for the last couple of years. And as usual, when I think about something for a while, I feel very clever for having come up with an original thought. And then I realized that somebody else has already said it much better than I have. So I guess this kind of goes back to 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was reading the last book in Wheel of Time, and the ending has kind of this exchange of bodies or something like that, where the hero walks away in someone else's body, and I was fairly new to Orthodoxy, and I had to call you up and say, I don't know what to do with this. This doesn't seem to work. And you had to just sit me down and say, that's right. It doesn't work. It's not Orthodoxy. And then more recently, I've been reading a fair bit of Brandon Sanderson and Orson Scott Card. I read through Dune. And I've enjoyed all of those. I will go back to those authors and those books eventually. They're fun to read. But what I started to realize is, reading through those, when you start to wonder, what's the author getting at? What's the author's background? Where did this come from? You end up with, there are a couple of Mormons in there. You might get some weird Eastern stuff, like with Robert Jordan. And sometimes there are Christian ideas, but there's never anything that's, you don't look at that and come back to something that's overtly Christian when you look at the author's intentions. But with Tolkien, that's all you come back to. And the light bulb moment for me was reading about one of the battles in the appendices at the end of Return of the King. And there's kind of a common theme through those, that everything gets very bleak and the enemy is about to win, and then there's a sudden, swift change of fortune, and the good guys win. The eucatastrophe, and even in these descriptions buried in the appendix of some long ago battle, you're still getting that idea that eventually points back to the resurrection. So that's what I've been thinking about. That's probably all I'm going to think about when I read Tolkien for I don't know, maybe the foreseeable future.
Yeah. There's something special about it. It's funny you mentioned, Brandon Sanderson and Orson Scott Card, both of whose writing I love and very much enjoy, and yet, you push the boundaries, the edges of their work, and it starts to feel like Mormon fan fiction.
Right.
And I suppose you could describe, Lord of the Rings as Roman Catholic, as Christian fan fiction. But it also lines up with reality a fair bit better, which is interesting. So, yeah, and just to be clear, I don't intend any slur on either author, by that comment. It's just, we all write what we know. We write what is important to us. But Tolkien's life is steeped in the medieval church, and therefore what he writes, it resonates so beautifully with reality, and with a reality that is suffused with prayer. Yeah. Anyway, I love it. Thank you for sharing. Let's move on. So, next we have some questions and comments from our listeners. So, first of all, we have, I think, an email that I guess was sent several months ago, but I never received it. And then he sent it again just a few weeks ago, so we'll read it now. I think that's accurate for this one. So would you read this long and very thoughtful letter, Josh?
Of course. Greetings, Father Anthony. I would like to say firstly that I am incredibly grateful that you have kept the podcast going. I always enjoy listening to my favorite Tolkien podcast. I just finished listening to your latest episode with Dr. Brad Berzer. I was grateful for the profound insights and also enjoyed the light humor. I have two subjects which I would like to comment on. Number one, the first subject is a challenge against your theory about Tom Bombadil. I sent this as an email at the end of last year, and as this dead horse keeps raising its head, I was uncertain if you had received that particular email. If you did, please ignore this subject and skip to number two.
I did not, so thank you for sending it again.
My argument is mostly just from the point that Aule is not Tom. As a craftsman myself, the character of Aule resonates most with me out of all the Valar, and I wished to offer some of my thoughts in the Master Smith's defense. I believe that in all true craftsmen/artists there lives this urge or longing to create, to take raw materials and craft them into something useful and beautiful. There is a joy that comes from taking basically nothing and making it into something good and strong that serves and adorns for decades. But the delight and pride of Aule is in the deed of making, and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. The Silmarillion, the Ainulindale. Among Aule's most notable creations was the great chain Againor in the history of Middle-earth, the chaining of Melko. Tulkas, Aule, and Orome wrestle Melko and bind him with it. He also made the lamps Iluin and Ormal, which he did at the request of his wife, Yavanna. After the destruction of the trees, he made the vessels of the sun and moon. But probably the creation most dear to his heart was the race of dwarves, beings he could teach and would create things like he does. In response to the argument that the world was completed and Aule didn't need to keep making it, the art of making is never done, and the world had suffered much hurt from Morgoth and his servants that needed mending. As to the idea that Aule needed to repent of his teaching, bringing evil to the world through Feanor's possession of the Silmarils, Sauron's domination through the rings, or even Saruman's corruption through industry, I do not think that any repentance should require him to abandon creation entirely. Rather, Aule would exercise his skill by repairing what has been harmed. I think that quitting being an artist is more like fleeing your responsibility to fix what you contributed to the breaking of, rather than having a change of heart. Also, Aule is given special stewardship by Ilúvatar over the earth, like Manwë has with the skies, or Ulmo has over the waters, and these three are counted greatest among the Valar, with Aule ranking third. If Aule quit his crafting, it would be neglecting his role from Eru and abandoning the dwarves who look to him in a similar way that the elves do with Elbereth. If Aule needed to repent of tension between him and his wife, I don't think that would necessitate him to give up his trade and responsibilities either. I am unmarried, so I have no experience in the matter, but I would think that if marital tension ended up with one person completely changing their personality and forsaking their vocation for the other, it would usually bring about bitterness and resentment. We don't know what transpires between Aule and Yavanna after that chapter in the Silmarillion, but I think we see the union between the mountain and the forest healed through the friendship of Legolas and Gimli. The part where these two visit the glittering caves of Aglarond and the forest of Fangorn is a much better resolution to the conflict between gardeners and smiths than anything else. If you point to that one word where Tom Bombadil says he has making to do to hint that Tom might be a smith, I think that's ridiculous. I notice, in real life as well as in Tolkien's works, a stark contrast between the characteristics of makers and gardeners. Of the two, Tom is most definitely a gardener. He is a singer of silly songs, a constant caperer and tender of trees, not a craftsman. And if there are any smiths that laid down their hammer to take up gardening, Aule is not one of them. Personally, I view Tom Bombadil and Goldberry as their own type of beings, on the same power level as Melian or Ungoliant. I think that trying to categorize them too much is the same as tearing down the tower with which you could have seen the sea, and like Saruman, breaking a thing to see what it's made of. In closing, I would suggest that if you do not have the love of swinging a hammer, do not propose that the creator of the dwarves, shaper of the stones and earth, the master smith, should put his down. If you remain unswayed by my arguments, I shall not hold that against you. I shall always love this podcast and hope it continues for years and years. My second subject is some thoughts about AI through the lens of Lord of the Rings. As an artist, I've been noticing a growing clash between more traditional artists and AI supporters, and as an avid Tolkien fan, I couldn't help but think of some parallels we see in Middle-earth. We know that Tolkien was quite anti-technology, as we see in how the Shire is described, and especially in the conflict between Isengard and Fangorn. However, I don't think one should have a completely anti-technology view, or you would have to abandon everything down to the simple lever, and also things like indoor plumbing. I think the key is knowing what level of technology you have the strength of mind to use well. This can be seen in possibly one of the most advanced pieces of science in Middle-earth, the Palantir. When Pippin gave in to the temptation to look at the Palantir, His weak mind was quickly overpowered by Sauron, the force that controls what you see when you use it. What else does that remind me of? However, when Aragorn took the Palantir, he had the strength to use it rightly, although it was a struggle for even him. That being said, there are some technologies which are wholly corrupted, like the One Ring. Boromir saw it as a tool that could be used to help Gondor, but as we know, anything done with the ring, even if the wielder initially meant well, would eventually become as corrupted as Mordor. I think most people often overestimate their strength of mind when it comes to technology, and I think AI is the classic example of that. It's even designed to make you think less and thereby making your mind weaker. It's not my place to judge those who use AI, but I believe we underestimate its danger. Not because it will turn into sentient robots like some sci-fi movie, but just from its effect on humanity. One of the reasons I think that we continue to read Tolkien is that he reminds us how, despite the corruption of the enemy, one day the king will return and the Shire can be restored. Thank you once more for all your hard work in keeping this podcast thriving. At your service and your families, Brendan Petcow.
So, I love this email. I love the length and the thoughtfulness of it. I'm sorry that it took so long to get back. I'm glad you sent it again, Brendan. Josh, I mean, you and I are kind of at a different place in terms of the AI. I generally avoid using it, although since Google changed their search, I've been stuck using it a little bit, and I have found a little bit of utility to it, although I hate myself for it. But I think you've seen the utility of it, so I'd like your thoughts on this second half before I engage with the challenge of the first half.
So for me, I manage a database, and I manage it on the user side. And what I tell people is that I work in a fundraising office, and I'm not good enough with people to be a fundraiser, and I'm not good enough with computers to be in IT. But I found this perfect niche in between where I can sort of exist in both worlds. But one thing that would be terribly useful for me, but is also outside of my job, is understanding SQL code or writing SQL code. And I've always thought it would be lovely if I had time to learn that and do that at some point. And now I can use AI to read the SQL, write the SQL, and it's helped me to do a lot of things that I couldn't have done before, and without having to devote time that I don't have to learning something that's not part of my job description.
So maybe the AI helps it lets the computer help you talk to the computer. Yeah. Which seems like that's a valuable use. That's the thing that computers should be better at, ideally, so that human beings don't have to think like computers. But maybe we could even establish a little bit of a rule and say, if you start asking the computer to help you talk to human beings, then maybe there are more dangers there.
Yeah, and my wife and I are on very different sides of this. She shuns everything AI, whereas I've embraced it enthusiastically for work. But I guess I've kind of unconsciously set some boundaries. I only use it for work. Mm-hmm. If there's anything that I really care about, like Tolkien, I don't use AI to engage with that. And I don't use it much in my personal life, although I did have it create a chore chart for my kids, which has been wonderful. But it's nice. Anything that I really care about, I would prefer to use my own mind and not have the help.
My suspicion is anyone that uses AI is going to be conscious of the danger, and which is what Brendan's really saying. We need to not underestimate the danger of it. It can be a too easy path, or provide the illusion of too easy of a path with things that must be done by human beings. Only a human being can love. Only a human being can pray. Okay, taking up the gauntlet from the first half then. Brendan, I love your points, But honestly, most of your points, I think, are actually making my argument for me. Because if we pay attention to what it says about Aule, he is a maker, certainly. He makes the things of the earth and the gems, although also the Noldor, do a lot of gem making too. And I need to go back to see how that exactly is divvied up. But above all, Aule is depicted as one who yearns for the children of Iluvatar, and his making of the dwarves is made because he yearns so strongly to see elves and men that he tries to make what he remembered seeing in the music. He wants to have a part in shaping the children of Iluvatar. And Iluvatar accepts that desire as legitimate once it is submitted, once it's subordinated, once it is given back to the Creator. And in this way, the dwarves, gain their understanding, and they have, their own destiny. But, if that is what all of Aule's yearning to make tends towards elves and men and the shaping of them, the education of them, the teaching of them, the guidance and protection of them. And also, he's conscious over those long, then Aule is exactly the one, I should say, who would have perhaps one of the hardest times with the ultimate decision of the Valar to stay in Valinor and to leave Middle-earth to the children of Iluvatar, and give them mastery of it. Because that decision cuts him off from contact with those whom he has yearned so much to see. And I think back to that, to the image, the scene in the House of Tom Bombadil, where he gives effectively the hobbits a vision of the whole sweep of history back to the blackness. But included in that is especially that really poignant image of the line of the kings of men, all the way down to Aragorn. There is Bombadil right there at the intersection of the three broken kingdoms of lost Arnor, right there where he is able to defend them at their and give them a place of refuge when Angmar is attacking, which is why he recognizes that brooch from the barrow in the subsequent chapter. He seems clearly to have had the woman who wore it long ago as a guest in his home. He knows her, and he brings it for Goldberry to wear in memory of her. This makes sense to me as one who yearns for the children of Iluvatar, who has not abandoned making, but is, focusing his attention at this point with the world made, and the healing of its hurts entrusted mostly to the children, to elves and men, and really mostly to men at this point. So now his attention is to the care, the education, perhaps occasionally the defense of the least, the weakest of the children of Iluvatar. So there he is, camped out right on the edge of the Shire. Still making, but what is he making? He's making fuller, more grown up, more mature children of Iluvatar in a very careful, in a way that absolutely respects their freedom. So they only come into his house if they wander in there. He doesn't go and seek them out. Again, I agree with you. He's not going to lay aside his crafting, but this is what he's yearned for most of all. If he's Aule. If he's not, okay, then they're just coincidences. I'm stuck on this, but I'm not absolutely married to it. You make a lot of good points. The thought about the union between the mountain and the forest being, healed through the friendship of Legolas and Gimli. Sure, but why can't it be both? Why can't it be a theme that appears time and again? Anyway, Aule also is mentioned as not just attending to the dead things of the earth, but to the care of the living things. That's there in the early chapters of the Silmarillion. Yavanna is the one who makes the growing things, but Aule cares for them, which is kind of the sort of relationship that we see between Goldberry and Tom. So I like your argument, but a lot of your strongest points, I think, ultimately, if we pay full attention to all of the evidence, they could be enlisted as strongly on my side as on the contrary. Now, that's my perspective. Josh, what do you think?
Well, I want to complain to start off with, because when Father Tim came on the podcast, I believe he was let off the hook and didn't have to argue about Tom Bombadil and Aule.
An oversight which will soon be corrected.
I hope so. So I went to the letters.
Good.
And I wanted to read something from. Sorry, I'm taking too long with this. This is a letter that he wrote to W.H. Auden. Mm-hmm. It's on page 211 of the book, and this is his footnote about the Ents. He starts off saying, "Take the Ents for instance. I did not consciously invent them at all." It goes on a little bit about the Ents. But what he ends with, and into this has crept a mere piece of experience, the difference of the male and female attitude to wild things, the difference between unpossessive love and gardening. And so I think here he's talking about the Ents and the Entwives. Mm-hmm. But I kind of think that could be extended to the passage in the Silmarillion about Aule and Yavanna. Mm-hmm. Where there doesn't have to be a whole lot more significance to it, other than that, Tolkien was married. Obviously, he loved his wife, but spouses don't always see things the same way, and especially the husband and the wife have different perspectives. So that's how I like to read that passage, is not as some wrong that Aule has done or some sin that he needs to repent of. Just sometimes the husband wants to go cut wood and the wife wants to grow things. Let's see. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit here. But the other letter I wanted to talk about is on page 334 about the tension that you see between the dwarves and the Ents, and of course between elves and dwarves. But this was something that if I'd read it, I'd forgotten about it. But when Beren comes back to Doriath after the dwarves have sacked it, Tolkien says in this letter that the Ents actually helped him, which I got a kick out of. And that, I used to think, is the story with Aule and Yavanna there to explain the tension between the dwarves and the Ents, or is it just there as kind of a random thing? But I like this one too, to say that obviously the Ents don't like dwarves because of what they did to Doria.
Sure.
So there's that, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up, just to mention it, is if you look in Unfinished Tales in the section on the Istari, I don't think that Aule could have been Tom Bombadil hanging out in Middle-earth at the same time that he was selecting Kurumo or Saruman to be one of the Istari. Mm-hmm. Nor could Goldberry have been Yavanna at the same time that she was there selecting Radagast. Mm-hmm. So just throwing that piece of hard evidence out there, if that makes a difference to you.
And honestly, that's a great transition to our second listener note, who raises a similar objection. So So, look, I'm stuck on Tom Bombadil, everybody, but you all keep on writing letters about it and engaging, which allows the conversation to continue, which I am here for. I'm enjoying this. If anyone stops enjoying it, then write in a letter asking your fellow listeners to please stop talking to Father Anthony about it so he'll shut up already. But
please stop talking to...
So our second listener note, this is a comment from YouTube from just a couple weeks ago. So I'll read this and you can respond first, Josh. This is from Daniel Doob. Hello, Father. My name is Daniel. I'm a long-time listener, first-time commenter. Firstly, I have really been enjoying the deep dive walk through the Lord of the Rings. Secondly, I had a thought during this video about your ongoing theory about Tom Bombadil, and I confess I am less learned in Silmarillion lore than you or most of your guests and listeners, so I assume that since no one else has raised this objection, then there very well may be an obvious answer. So, if some of those elves still present in the Third Age were present during many of the events of the First Age, then they would have been having direct dealings with the Valar, correct? But if they still consider Tom Bombadil eldest and don't know his origin, doesn't that imply that he was already present at that same time as well, contemporaneous with Aule, and therefore couldn't be the same person? And then a reply to that from Walvander J. Alas, I believe Master Daniel's comment has defeated Father Anthony's theory. My sincerest commiserations, Father. I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil. Okay, so go ahead with your thoughts, Josh. Pile on.
I guess I should have saved my last comment about the Istari for this one.
It led right into it. It was perfect.
Yeah. So I agree. Obviously, I agree with anyone who says that you're wrong on this topic. But what I always come back to now, if you remember when I came on before, I'd been spending a lot of time with that Joseph Pierce book.
Yeah,
and that's where I first heard the idea that that Tom Bombadil kind of represents a pre-fallen Adam figure. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. And that's what rings true to me with Tom Bombadil, without any explanation of exactly who he is and how he fits into the taxonomy of Tolkien's world. Just representing this idea or ideal. Sorry, those are my own thoughts now, and not really responding to Daniel's comment.
It's all in the same conversation. I think it's most likely that is in fact correct. My problem is I don't think Tolkien does that anywhere else, which makes Bombadil unique, and it feels a little bit of that's just something extraneous that doesn't fit anywhere else in Tolkien's internal logic, in the internal logic of his world. It's just effectively an intrusion from reality. It's a figure to represent this purpose or this theme, and I know that's basically what he says Tom is, but with everything else he does that while making it fit within the schema. And yes, I know Ungoliant doesn't fit, unless we say that she's another rebellious Vala because she's more powerful than Melkor in some ways, and that's a problem. There are certainly ragged edges of the legendarium that don't easily fit into the neat schemas. But all I'm trying to say is this works a lot better than I think a lot of people think that it does. And that's why I'm still stuck on it, because every objection, even this one, it actually, I think, enriches, my way of thinking about it. So I'll say that. Avala is not Iluvatar. They can't be in multiple places at once, right? But they are not required to always only be in one place and always appear in the same way. We know that that's not the case. We know the Valar move around and have lived in different places, and we know that they can take different shapes. We know that they've walked among, the Maya, certainly, because Gandalf, Olorin, walked unseen among the elves, and we get the sense potentially even the men as well, and brought unseen comfort to them before, in different periods. So my suggestion is, Aule and Yavanna, as the Valar decide, we're leaving Middle-earth to the children of Ilúvatar. We know all of the Valar don't, therefore, just stay behind the fence of the Pelori. Orome still goes riding, Ulmo still visits the shores. But in that portion of the Silmarillion, we also see that both Yavanna, certainly Yavanna, still goes and visits and tends the growing things, and I believe Aule as well. We don't hear any details of what that looks like. My suggestion is, maybe they're not always at the house of Tom Bombadil. They're also not as limited by time and space. They could say, hey, someone's coming. Let's make sure we're at home to receive them. And otherwise, they're there in Valinor. They're the powers. They're gods. They're not infinite, eternal, but it's perfectly possible for them to appear in one shape, in power, where they reign, in Valinor. And also, it would be necessary, if they're going to be present at all in Middle-earth, which both of them want to be. They are depicted explicitly as yearning to be present with all of the children of Ilúvatar, not just the elves who end up in Valinor. Then it would have to be emphatically, absolutely incognito. Which is kind of how Tom and Goldberry present. So, I don't think that the theory is defeated, but I wouldn't, would I?
Well, let me say this. I had been working on a charitable response a few months ago, and then it kept coming up, and I abandoned it and embraced the attack.
Bring it.
But what I think makes this compelling is, when you look at Tom and Goldberry, it's such a beautiful, perfect example of a husband and wife, and the way that they interact with each other, they treat each other, they love each other. That's what I would want. That's what I want my relationship with my wife to be. There's something just beautiful, true good and beautiful about that. And I think it's natural to see that tension in the Aule and Yavanna narrative and see that turning into something like that. So I think that there's a deep truth to what Tom and Goldberry represent that lends itself to this theory. In a way that saying that what are the other off the wall theories that Ungoliant is there, or yes,
Ungoliant
it doesn't work with everyone.
Ungoliant is Bella the Mare,
Oh yeah.
Okay, fine, you can say it. It's meaningless. Anyway, thank you all again, I will say, for your forbearance with my goofy theory. I would say it's my podcast. I can be stupid if I want to, until Father Andrew says, nope, we're taking this back again. So, all right. I'm sure we'll talk more about Tom Bombadil, but unless everyone says, Father, we're done, in which case I'll do my best. We have one more listener submission to share, but it's not just a letter, but it's actually another photo of a candidate Weathertop. So, Josh, if you can read this brief note, I will share the picture and we can kind of zoom in on it so we get the effect as he describes it. So go ahead.
Okay. If one drives from Valley Mills, Texas to Clifton by Highway 6, they will see, ahead and just to the left, a large hunting blind on the horizon. A little further, after the bridge over the train tracks, a bald hill and a second hill.
And that's all he says, Mr. Jake apparently from Texas. But it's a nice image. It's a good open hill, and it does kind of evoke a watchtower of some sort. So thank you, Jake. And I did pick the one that doesn't have anyone's license plate on it because he sent us two. So anyway, beautiful. All right, and with any thoughts on that hill, Josh? Any reviews of Jake's thoughts?
I haven't seen a lot of Texas, so I enjoyed that picture, and I don't have a lot of hills like that around here in southern Michigan. So it was nice to see that. I think the bare top of the hill really evokes Weathertop, and I saw it right away.
Yeah,
I like that one.
I know the next time I get to go back to Flagstaff where we grew up, Josh, I'm probably going to take like 50 photos of different hills that could be Weathertop because
Right.
They're all over the place there.
Me too.
All right. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today, but truly we love reading and discussing your notes. As you can see, we've spent 40 minutes on it. So please continue to send them to us at Amon Sûl at ancientfaith.com, or you can message us on the Facebook page, or you can send us a YouTube comment, and you will probably hear it on an episode to come. And do please continue to send the photograph submissions of candidate weathertops, so we can feature them on the YouTube. And if you live or work or commute under the shadow of Amon Sûl, share a photo with us. All right. This brings us to the main portion of our episode today. We've brought Josh back to discuss the long walk to Mordor, or at least its beginning, as we reach the chapter, The Ring Goes South. Before we begin, however, as always, we will provide an outline that we prepared of the action in this chapter to give our sense of the bird's eye view of what happens. But if you haven't read it yourselves recently, we do urge you to pause, go back and read it yourself, and then come back so we can proceed. And you can review our summary. So, go away. Are you back? Excellent. Here's the outline. So, as always, I think we have 6 parts this time. So, part 1, the Hobbit Conference, immediately after the Council of Elrond. Merry and Pippin are put out. Much remains to decide. Scouts must go out and find what they can find. They probably won't set out till winter arrives, but Gandalf plans to come along. So, part 2. They spend 2 months in Rivendell. The scouts go out everywhere. There is no news of the riders. 8 of the 9 horses are found dead. Then they begin to plan who will go. It will be 9 walkers: Frodo, Sam, Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Gimli, and Legolas, and 2 elves from Elrond's household. But Pippin and Merry object, and Gandalf supports them. So the 2 elves from Elrond's house are out, and no Glorfindel. Pippin and Merry are in. Part 3, the last week before departing. Narsil, or rather its shards, are reforged as Anduril. Bilbo gives Frodo Sting and his mail shirt, and Bilbo sings a song, I sit beside the fire and think. Part 4, the departure. Boromir wins his horn. Elrond says, "Don't do that again." Then there's a description of the others and their equipment, like an RPG. Bill the pony is ready to go. We get the final counsels of Elrond, no oaths for Gimli, and off they go. Merry Christmas. Part 5, the journey south. The first 14 days, cold and boredom, little change to the land. Then they arrive in Holland with holly trees. They have the first view of the 3 mountains of Moria. They make their first camp, but Aragorn is worried. It's too quiet. Sam keeps the first watch, and Aragorn joins him. They're sleeping during the day, so Sam sees during the day. Crows, Crebain from Dunland. So no fire, no rest, no break, straight for the pass. But the weather looks bad, and Frodo overhears Aragorn and Gandalf discussing whether to go over or under the mountains. The conclusion is over, but everyone's going to carry a branch for a campfire in pressing need. And then part 6, the pass, they start to climb, and the snow begins. The arm of Sauron has grown long, they say. They stop and camp. The snow grows deep. They make a fire and they rest. And then they retreat back down the mountain. Good thing that they brought doughty men. I hope that's the right pronunciation. Caradhras has defeated them. So that's the main movement in the chapter, I think. Before we go on, Josh, anything important that you think I missed, or anything from the last chapters that you want to note as well?
So this is this is more from the last chapter, but it's the quote that you used as the title for the last episode, and it reminded me of a line for the movie that's gnawed at me for a quarter of a century, and it's a great line. When movie Gandalf asks Saruman, when did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness? What a great line. And Ian McKellen delivers it just absolutely brilliantly, which is probably why it's stuck in my mind. But the idea of the true and the right course being the rational course, I think, is at odds with what Tolkien wrote. And that's pretty explicit in that quote, let folly be our cloak, not let reason be our cloak.
Yeah.
And I think you see as the journey progresses that it's very hard for them to be hopeful, because it is such a foolish, irrational thing to just send the ring into Mordor. Yeah. The rational thing is to take the ring and use it, which is what Saruman wanted to
do. And he makes a very rational argument for it, honestly. Rationality is not on Gandalf's side, but right is. Yeah, I like your point. It's I'm sure my friend Zach Heller would just say it's part of the movie maker's art, sneaking in a little bit of exposition and perhaps getting a chance to use the line from the books, Saruman the Wise, because that sobriquet, if I'm using sobriquet correctly, it does appear twice, both within the Council of Elrond. In one of them, Saruman is proclaiming himself as Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors. And then the other is Gandalf berating himself, for being lulled by the words of Saruman the Wise. But it makes me wonder if there's not some irony in his use of that title at that point, because Saruman the Wise is just, in his wisdom, if I can jump quickly across from the legendarium to reality, the message of the cross is foolishness to the wise, but to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. Anyway, and I think you explained what part of it rings false. It's the calling Saruman to account for abandoning reason for madness when, anyway, yeah. It's a nice point. Anything you want to add?
Nope. I thought that was a great outline. Saved me the trouble of having to go back and read it. So thank you.
That's not what it's for. All right. So now this is the part that we've skipped the last couple chapters because it was just too big of an issue. But now we'll talk about how this chapter developed in the course of Tolkien's many drafts. Feel free to jump in on top of me anytime through here, Josh, because I know you've done a lot of reading. We have discussed a lot of the changes of the drafts before, as at least a number of those substantial changes involve the evolution of Trotter the Hobbit Ranger into Aragorn the Dunedain, the heir of Elendil. I think Deacon Seraphim and I noted the scene where the crows of Crebain from Dunland appear, and it's originally Trotter and then eventually Strider that pulls Sam down into the shade of a holly bush. That was the point, I think, where Deacon Seraphim made his quip about the theory of Schrodinger's Strider. You can't tell whether he's a hobbit or a man until you finish writing the story, as it were. I think the same issue appears at the end of the chapter, as all the dialogue on the descent from Caradhras belongs to Boromir, leaving Aragorn strangely absent from the conversation, even though he is referred to as one of those doughty men. But of course, that's because in the original draft, Trotter was one of the hobbits who needed rescuing and wasn't wading through any snow at all, so Boromir gets all the heroic lines about that. And Tolkien leaves them to Boromir in the final draft. I feel like there was a sense in the History of Middle-earth versions that Tolkien wasn't quite comfortable with having Trotter sidelined in that way, and that might even have been one of the little bits that niggled at him, that Trotter can't actually be a hobbit. It doesn't fit with the character. But I may be misremembering that. Regardless, one of the issues encountered in the original draft is that Boromir, rather realistically, simply doesn't have the stamina to make 5 separate back and forth trips carrying a hobbit through the snowdrift. So having 2 men available in the final version plus a pony makes for a more functional story. Although it's interesting that even in the second draft, after Aragorn's become a man, Tolkien still lets Boromir wade through the snow alone a couple times, and then he seems to remember, wait a minute, Aragorn's there, Aragorn's a man, he can carry a hobbit too, get in there, Aragorn, and then fixes it completely in the final draft. I find it kind of funny. Maybe seeing a little bit of the, oops, I forgot, get in there. Any thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, mostly just that that's entertaining to watch him transform from a hobbit into the Dunedain.
Yeah.
And how it affects the story in little details, like, oh no, this guy needs to be carrying other people. He's no longer a helpless hobbit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those little details about how the story evolved and grew over time.
Yeah. Kind of make me appreciate the fact that Tolkien was as detail-oriented as he was, that he, literally assigned a letter to every one of the Nazgul to make sure he had them all in the right place at the right time and there were no hidden contradictions. So, anyway.
Right. I used to read the it was a timeline of the years or whatever it is in the appendix, where it has the date-by-date account of everything that happened. And I thought, it's really nice of him to put this here for me. I don't know why, and now it makes sense. He needed to do that to make sure everything lined up. And you think about later on when you see things like it'll say Merry saw the sunrise, and little did he know that Frodo was looking at that same sunrise in Ithilien. Things like that. It's the care that he takes to make sure those details line up.
To be able to say that, so he's not, never cheating. Always, the background holds up all the way down to its roots. Yeah. All right. Otherwise, I think it's notable that in the original drafting, that the first portion of the chapter was actually still part of the Council of Elrond, since it happened on the same day. The 2 chapters are basically written in uninterrupted sequence in those early drafts. There's just the added heading of the ring goes south to indicate that a chapter break would eventually occur here. It's also worth noting that in the original 2 drafts, I believe, just the original draft, the composition of the Fellowship was only 7. Frodo, Sam, Merry, Faramond, who kind of becomes Pippin, Trotter, the Hobbit, Boromir, the Man, and Gandalf. Only 7. There was no Gimli, there was no Legolas, although their inclusion was considered from early on, and Glorfindel also was considered for inclusion. So I can go on, but any thoughts about those changes, Josh?
I think it's interesting how it goes from that original party where it's at one point he's thinking that it should be all hobbits, and then it becomes more important to have the 3 kindreds all represented, and you see it eventually become the full 9.
Yeah.
But interesting to see how the story we take for granted now maybe still had some lingering elements of The Hobbit, and this being a story that's all about hobbits.
Yeah, and then instead we use it through the Hobbit's eyes to broaden the scope and see everybody. Yeah. So interestingly, also absent from that original draft is the longer goodbye from Bilbo, and really much of anything from Bilbo. He hardly has a line in the original draft. But the gifting of the mail coat and Sting are absent. The poem is absent. I sit beside the fire and think. Really, the only words that we hear from Bilbo after the council are, good luck. I don't suppose you'll be able to keep a diary, Frodo, my lad, but I shall expect a full account when you get back. And don't be too long. I have lived longer than I expected already. Farewell. Which isn't much. It's recognizable. The character of Bilbo is recognizable, I should say. But Bilbo is always recognizable. He's always distinct. And then they also leave substantially earlier in the original draft. They leave in mid-November, really staying just a few weeks. Less, maybe a month, but maybe just 3 weeks from when they arrive in, late October, as opposed to the late December and actually on Christmas Day of the published fellowship. Thoughts about those changes, those points, Josh?
I've been thinking a little bit how the characters change from either a little bit of flippancy or maybe outright rudeness to a lot more depth. And so you look at how Bilbo's role changes, and where it's just make sure you keep a diary, and then in the published version is this very heartfelt poem.
Yeah.
It
really an intentional, overt passing of the torch. You're going on the adventure, I'm staying home, but there's a poignancy to Bilbo in the published version that you're right, it comes across more flippant in the original draft. So, with that said, though, most of the differences are additions to the chapter, but it's remarkable how much Tolkien avoids changing what he'd originally written. He'll write additions around the original. One change that did strike me, with that said, shows up during the argument between Gandalf and Trotter about whether to go over the pass or through Moria, where Gandalf says, "I think no good of any part of our course, as you know well, Master Peregrine. Still, we have to go on. It is no good whatever our trying to cross further south into the land of Rohan. The Horse Kings have long been in the service of Sauron." In the final version, of course, there are two changes. We'll come to that. But the line is, "Who knows which side now the marshals of the Horse Lords serve?" So it's a question, not a certainty, that they serve Sauron. But it begins as Gandalf's line, and it ends up as Aragorn's line. And that's interesting, because in the original draft, Trotter wants to go through Moria, and Gandalf wants the pass, whereas in the final, Gandalf expects that Moria will be necessary, and Aragorn is determined to avoid it and try the pass first. Christopher Tolkien makes a note, this seems to have been changed as Tolkien was writing the second draft. This shows up on page 168 of the Treason of Isengard. So in Chris Tolkien's words, "It was at this point that my father, quote-unquote, realized that it was Trotter and not Gandalf who especially feared Moria." Now, I wonder, why did that suddenly seem so apparent to Tolkien? Any thoughts, Josh?
I didn't get around to pulling my copy of the Treason of Isengard that you gave me graciously off my shelf and flipping it to page 168. So I haven't read that part yet. But what I was thinking as I was reading it here is that it seems so. A big part of the chapter and the discussion about Moria in the published version is Aragorn's foresight or foreboding that Gandalf should not enter Moria because something will happen to him. And so my speculation, which maybe would be somewhat confirmed if I pulled the book off the shelf, is that it's whenever he realizes that Gandalf dies in Moria that they have to change those rules so that he can get that foresight and that foreshadowing or foreboding into Trotter or Aragorn's role.
Sure. I think that makes sense, and certainly I think, but I think that's what it ends up being as he fleshes it out. But it seems like it begins with an accident, because if I'm remembering how it plays out, they're having the conversation with Trotter arguing for. Trotter arguing for Moria and Gandalf arguing for the pass, and that's the original draft. In the second draft, it's the same thing. Aragorn is arguing for Moria, Gandalf is arguing for the pass, and then Frodo is listening. They turn and say, "Don't tell anyone else about this. Keep it quiet. We need to discuss this." And then when they return to the conversation, Gandalf is arguing for Moria and Aragorn is arguing for the pass. And Tolkien seems to have written it, looked at it, and said, yeah, Aragorn is actually the one who would want to avoid Moria. I need to rewrite the rest of this. It seems like an accident. It's that thing Tolkien does. He makes a mistake, quote unquote, and he's like, nah, I like it. We're going to do it.
Right.
And then he tries to discern in that the meaning behind it, and a lot of beautiful, brilliant things basically come from him effectively treating his own oversights, his own mistakes, in the same way as a scholar would treat a found manuscript, trying to discern what is the reason, what is the connection, what is the explanation for this. I think it's part of what makes him a brilliant writer. He uses that tool from his academic career, applies it to himself, and comes up with beautiful explanations that enhance the story or take it in completely different directions. Yeah.
I like that take better than mine.
Well, yeah, thank you. Anyway, anything else that you think should be noted from the History of Middle-earth material from Tolkien's earlier drafts, especially from the Return of the Shadow, which I know is what you were looking at more?
Just quickly, I think I love seeing how careful an editor Tolkien is. And he starts off with a pretty tight narrative, and then he goes through and he makes it better. And his additions are very, very exact, and they have a purpose. And there's, there are a lot of words in Tolkien, but I don't feel like there are a lot of wasted words.
Yeah.
Everything serves a purpose. And I started off comparing him to fantasy writers, I won't say other fantasy writers. I'll compare him to modern fantasy writers. Yeah. Those, we both enjoy them, but they can get kind of long and maybe a little sloppy at times and desperately need some careful editing.
Yeah. And this has been on my mind lately too, because, I don't know if I've talked about this yet. They asked me to be one of the speakers at Doxicon in DC this fall, or I guess early this winter. And they're talking about how does fantasy work, and how does it feed into, and I'm mischaracterizing the whole topic of the conference, which is embarrassing because I need to talk at it, but that's kind of the theme that I'm reflecting on. Fantasy it quickly gets to be, it can become so just big books for the sake of publishing big books, which is not, again, to criticize any particular writer. Just it's hard not to look at them and then look at the Lord of the Rings and think, this could be a lot tighter, this could be a lot better, this could be a lot more well considered. It feels almost like we're telling stories for the sake of telling stories, or at least that's a danger that we need to be watching. I haven't written it yet, so I'm reflecting on these themes, though. Anyway, there is one bit of text from the second draft that I think is worth quoting. This is the one that shows up in the Treason of Isengard. And it's worth quoting because it was immediately replaced by some poetry from Bilbo. But, and the poetry is better, but something is lost here. So during the discussion about when they're going to depart, Bilbo remarks, "You can't wait now till spring, and you can't go till the scouts come back. So off you go, nice and comfortable, just when winter's beginning to bite." And Pippin says, "Quite in the Gandalf manner." And Gandalf says, "Exactly." And then, then this is replaced by "when winter first begins to bite." The little, 4 lines there. That's delightful, it's lovely, but I regret the loss of Pippin's quip and Gandalf's quick response. And I'm glad that even though that's lost, that particular sharpness of their relationship is otherwise retained and built out in the final version. But yeah, quite in the Gandalf manner. Exactly.
Exactly.
What's the point of making a journey when it's comfortable?
I like that. I think there's that running theme of Pippin antagonizing Gandalf, but never to a point that the relationship is damaged.
Right. Even fool of a took, throw yourself in. But clearly, it's like right. when you pay attention, like, okay, they've had this back and forth. They're poking each other the whole time. All right. With that, I think it's time to actually get into the chapter as published. So this is a transitional chapter, and therefore there's a lot that happens that we won't be able to read, but we're going to give it our best shot because there's a lot that's lovely here. So we certainly need to read a fair bit of the beginning, this conversation of the hobbits later in the day of the Council of Elrond. We're going to at least read a couple pages, but we'll pause and discuss along the way. So Josh, would you begin?
Later that day, the hobbits held a meeting of their own in Bilbo's room. Merry and Pippin were indignant when they heard that Sam had crept into the council and had been chosen as Frodo's companion. "It's most unfair," said Pippin. "Instead of throwing him out and clapping him in chains, Elrond goes and rewards him for his cheek." "Rewards," said Frodo. "I can't imagine a more severe punishment. You are not thinking what you are saying. Condemned to go on this hopeless journey, a reward? Yesterday I dreamed that my task was done, and I could rest here a long while, perhaps for good." "I don't wonder," said Merry, "and I wish you could. But we are envying Sam, not you. If you have to go, then it will be a punishment for any of us to be left behind, even in Rivendell. We have come a long way with you and been through some stiff times. We want to go on." "That's what I meant," said Pippin. "We hobbits ought to stick together, and we will. I shall go unless they chain me up. There must be someone with intelligence in the party." "Then you certainly will not be chosen, Peregrine Took," said Gandalf, looking in through the window which was near the ground. "But you are all worrying yourselves unnecessarily. Nothing is decided yet." "Nothing decided?" cried Pippin. "Then what were you all doing? You were shut up for hours." "Talking," said Bilbo. "There was a deal of talk, and everyone had an eye-opener. Even old Gandalf. I think Legolas's bit of news about Gollum caught even him on the hop, though he passed it off." "You are wrong," said Gandalf. "You are inattentive. I had already heard of it from Gwaihir. If you want to know, the only real eye-openers, as you put it, were you and Frodo, and I was the only one that was not surprised."
Okay, so Merry is a brick, Pippin's a twerp. But a delightful one. I think the personality sketching that happens here is just masterful. Merry and Pippin and Sam. Hang on, Sam doesn't say anything, but he's present regardless. They're all entirely distinct, though, as are Frodo and Bilbo. Their voices are recognizable even without being labeled. In a sense, this is it's a continuation, it's a further development of the conversation at the house in Crickhollow, where Mary is again the one speaking and explaining that they're determined to go with Frodo, to back him and support him and not leave him alone to the end. But now Bilbo and Gandalf are added in as well. But Tolkien's ability to preserve the distinctions among the voices of so many characters and to really use the scene to strengthen those characters, it's just amazing to me. What are your thoughts, Josh?
I love that. And you really start to feel like you know them. And these the characters stay so constant as you get through the rest of the book. I had to go back and double check Tolkien just to make sure that he was correct, and it was Aragorn who reacted to Legolas's news about Gollum, not Gandalf. But I thought for a second I was going to catch him, but I did not. The other thing I like, I've been thinking about this a little bit. There's a theme that keeps coming up as someone faces the prospect of being left behind and doesn't want to be left behind and doesn't understand the danger. And I like the way that Mary puts it here. They're not envying Frodo, they're envying Sam. They don't want to be left behind. They want to keep going and stick together without really having any idea. Even after everything that's happened on their way to Rivendell, they still don't know what they're getting into, the darkness that's ahead of them.
Yeah. And therefore, the scene, we could say, is just revealing their ignorance, and that's there, but really it's revealing their love and their fidelity to Frodo. Yeah. All right. Well, let's continue. So Bilbo was talking. Yeah. Well, anyway, nothing was decided beyond choosing poor Frodo and Sam. I was afraid all the time that it might come to that if I was let off. But if you ask me, Elrond will send out a fair number when the reports come in. Have they started yet, Gandalf? Yes, said the wizard. Some of the scouts have been sent out already. More will go tomorrow. Elrond is sending elves, and they will get in touch with the rangers and maybe with Thranduil's folk in Mirkwood. And Aragorn has gone with Elrond's sons. We shall have to scour the lands all round for many long leagues before any move is made. So cheer up, Frodo. You will probably make quite a long stay here. Oh, said Sam gloomily. We'll just wait long enough for winter to come. That can't be helped, said Bilbo. It's your fault partly, Frodo my lad, insisting on waiting for my birthday. A funny way of honoring it, I can't help thinking. Not the day I should have chosen for letting the SBs, the Sackville Bagginses, into Bag End. But there it is. You can't wait now till spring, and you can't go till the reports come back. When winter first begins to bite, and stones crack in the frosty night, when pools are black and trees are bare, 'tis evil in the wild to fare. But that, I am afraid, will be just your luck. I'm afraid it will, said Gandalf. We can't start until we have found out about the riders. I thought they were all destroyed in the flood, said Merry. You cannot destroy ring-wraiths like that, said Gandalf. The power of their master is in them, and they stand or fall by him. We hope that they were all unhorsed and unmasked, and so made for a while less dangerous, but we must find out for certain. In the meantime, you should try and forget your troubles, Frodo. I do not know if I can do anything to help you, but I will whisper this in your ears. Someone said that intelligence would be needed in the party. He was right. I think I shall come with you. So great was Frodo's delight at this announcement that Gandalf left the windowsill where he had been sitting and took off his hat and bowed. I only said I think I shall come. Do not count on anything yet. In this matter, Elrond will have much to say, and your friend, the Strider. Which reminds me, I want to see Elrond. I must be off. So, comments on this. So this sets the stage for the longer stay in Rivendell, and it also explains something of the nature of ring-wraiths, that they have a particular need, at least at this stage, for their cloaks and their horses. And I think that reality bears some discussion between us, Josh. I also made a complete mistake because I was reading this and I thought Frodo was the one who stood up and took off his hat. And I was like, why is Frodo wearing a hat? What kind of hat does he wear? We've never seen this at all. It just goes to show you sometimes you have to read something out loud to actually read it. Because, yeah, that's clearly Gandalf taking off his hat and bowing in response to Frodo's unspoken delight. So, anyway, what are your thoughts about this, Josh?
Well, I made the same error, and I persisted so far in the error that I tried to do a little bit of research, and I remembered that I found that sheriffs wear caps with a feather in it. So hobbits do wear hats, but obviously, yes, as you said. Let's see. So I didn't have anything about the ring wraiths, but I love that interaction, and this is something that where it affects me maybe now that I'm older than I used to be. But these heartfelt interactions, these expressions of gratitude or hospitality or kindness, this is one of them. Sometimes when I read it, it maybe gets me a little misty-eyed in the same way that Galadriel speaks to Gimli. When he looks into her eyes and instead of an enemy, he sees a friend.
Yeah.
And the same when Faramir greets, or when he's talking to Frodo in Ithilien. Tolkien writes those beautifully, and I think I took those for granted when I was younger, and now I appreciate just how deep and meaningful that those are.
Yeah.
Even this one that's just kind of slipped in there, and if you're reading quickly, you'd miss it, or get confused about who is wearing a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think I may comment on it later, but like Frodo is really very down at this point. He's on the brink of despair, and Merry and Pippin are being manifestly silly, even though it's well-intentioned and beautiful as well. So, Gandalf's statement that he's going to come with him effectively hits Frodo as a little eucatastrophe. It's like, in hopelessness, all of a sudden there's this joy, and Gandalf meets it. Gandalf the Ainu, Gandalf the Maya, Gandalf the ancient angel takes off his hat and bows to the hobbit in the windowsill, just in acknowledgement of the joy that has just come about. It's a beautiful little mini scene that you blink and you miss it.
And this is I was trying to find the passage. I almost have it pulled up. This is what Gandalf does. He kindles hope.
Yeah.
This is why Círdan gives him the ring. And yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's kindled hope here. All right. Would you continue the passage here?
All right. How long do you think I shall have here? Said Frodo to Bilbo when Gandalf had gone. Oh, I don't know. I can't count days in Rivendell, said Bilbo. But quite long, I should think. We can have many a good talk. What about helping me with my book and making a start of the next? Have you thought of an ending? Yes, several, and all are dark and unpleasant, said Frodo. Oh, that won't do, said Bilbo. Books ought to have good endings. How would this do? And they all settled down and lived together happily ever after. It will do well, if it ever comes to that, said Frodo. Ah, said Sam, and where will they live? That's what I often wonder.
Okay, so I like the exchange between Frodo and Bilbo, and I don't like, but it's important to see the gloom that still has settled fairly squarely on Frodo, despite that hope. He's not snapped out of it. He has something to hold on to. But Sam's question at the end is the part that doesn't quite make sense to me. It's remarkable. It seems to indicate deep occurrence. Why would Sam question where they will live? Movie Sam would never question where they will live. It's the Shire, the Shire, the Shire, the Shire, the Shire. But Book Sam apparently wonders where they'll live. Is he doubting whether they'll return to the Shire or whether they will be a Shire to return to? I mean, this question would make some sense after his vision in Galadriel's mirror, but that makes it even stranger here because he's had no inkling of anything wrong with the Shire. Now, or, is this maybe a veiled reference to the fact that Sam left home at what would otherwise have been a transitional point in his life when he's contemplating, as we find eventually, he's contemplating a change from being the gardener at Bag End, living with the gaffer at Bagshot Row, to being a married hobbit, living somewhere on his own with Rosie and building a family. Is this a reference to that? Is there something else I'm missing? Any insights, Josh?
Not really. This wasn't in the first draft in Return of the Shadow, but I don't know when it was added, and I wonder if it was added as a result of what Sam sees, what he sees in the mirror of Galadriel, how he changes. This is it's kind of a off the cuff comment, but it's one of the more serious things that you see Sam say at this point. We'll talk a little bit more about some of his reactions to their journey, and he provides a little bit of comic relief. But this is something kind of serious, and it foreshadows everything that happens at the end.
I just, as you were talking, I had a thought, because earlier in the conversation, one of the first things Frodo says is, when he's like he's correcting Merry and Pippin for being so flippant about it. He's saying, why would you want to go along? How can you be envious? This is the worst news ever. I had just thought I might be able to stay here for a while, maybe forever. And now I have to leave again. And that comment could potentially create some pause for Sam, because Sam also, maybe in Sam's mind, he was thinking, well, we'll go with Mr. Frodo, and either we die with him or we come home again. But wait, maybe Mr. Frodo wants to stay in Rivendell, but I've left Rosie back in the Shire. What? How am I? Maybe this is a reflection of that.
You cannot always be torn in two, or what does Frodo say? Yeah. I like that, because we don't know at this point that Rosie exists. We don't find that out until much later, but obviously Sam at this point is probably thinking a little bit about Rosie.
Yeah. And did you see enough of the early draft to see the version where the idea is that Bilbo or Frodo or Bingo, whoever it is, runs off and gets married, and then Tolkien does this whole aside. Because hobbits, of course, when they go and get married, they don't tell anybody about it. They just sort of just disappear and end up married afterwards. And I love how Tolkien he dismisses that whole thing, but he keeps that little bit of Hobbit lore, because that's what Sam does. He has an understanding. He comes back, and it was totally and completely a secret from everybody until, oh yeah, obviously, Rosie's been waiting for me, and obviously we'll get married now. You're still game. I'm still game. Good. Cool. Anyway, beautiful. All right. Yes. Then you made fun of me in the script, but we don't need to. Josh made fun of me for my Aule and Yavanna theory. That's all. But you already heard him do that, dear listener, so we don't need to read that. At any rate, moving on, not much is said about the next 2 months, but the text does describe the return of all the scouts in mid-December, and the confirmation from those scouts that the riders do seem to have been unhorsed and unclothed, and no one anywhere has heard anything of either them or of Gollum, even though other matters continue to worsen, especially wolves are multiplying and moving where they hadn't been before. There are some interesting tidbits. Radagast was not at home. Elrond's sons apparently had visited Lothlorien, although it's described as somewhere down the Silver Lode. The destination isn't named, and they won't talk to anyone but Elrond about it. Once the news is gathered, then Elrond begins the final preparations. All this is important stuff. Beforehand, though, we didn't actually talk about the riders and why it is that, they can't do anything if they have no horses and they have no clothes. And I think we should at least note that, because why is that? It's not that they don't exist if they don't have a horse and a cloak. It isn't, they could speak, they could shriek, they could seize, as much as they can without. They could stab. That their capacity to do harm generally is not expressed through their having a steed or being clothed as such. And in the confrontation with Éowyn, the Nazgul has his cloak thrown back, and that his head is invisible beneath, between the crown and the cowl, is part of the terror. So I wonder why the significance of the horse and the cloak. Any thoughts you would, I have some speculations, but, I'm curious what you think, Josh.
This is one of those things that I'm mostly happy not thinking too much about. But I think if nothing else, it's a good reminder that whatever is left of the writers of the Nazgul is not human, and they can be unhorsed, unclothed, and then they have to go back and sort of reset because they're wraiths. They don't have human bodies anymore in the same sense that we do, which is odd because obviously they're wielding swords and maces, but at the same time, if they are unhorsed and unclothed, then they have to drift back as wraiths to their master to be reclothed.
Sure, and I suppose we could get really technical and say, and of course they could pick up a random rock, and a rock can be floating through the air, and a shriek and a smack, and they've killed someone, and all of that is very terrible. But that's not what they are. They're not the bogeyman. They're really functioning, when they are a reflection on the nature of evil. It is a perversion of something good, something real, something whole. But as it is perverted, it becomes more and more nothing. And yet that nothing is a something, but it has to be, most of what it is fear and absence. And that is what makes it terrifying. And the Nazgul with no clothes, to highlight their invisibility, to highlight their wraithness, have less power, perhaps. I'm really thinking out loud. It's an interesting thing because, on a technical basis, they've lost no hit points. They've lost, this wouldn't play in a video game,
right?
But it functions. It functions more in reality. The cloak of nothingness that they wear is the way in which they project the power of nothingness. I'm not sure I like that sentence, but it's something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to think too much about it, but I like the idea that without the cloak to actually, without a real thing to give shape to their nothingness, that they're diminished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he talks about it enough. It seems worth talking about, even if all we say is not sure what he's doing, but it's effective. It works, and it's hard to articulate, but it does make sense somehow. All right. So now moving on to what happens once all the news is gathered. Elrond's beginning the final preparations. All this is important. Would you begin it for us, Josh?
Elrond summoned the hobbits to him. He looked gravely at Frodo. "The time has come," he said. "If the ring is to set out, it must go soon. But those who go with it must not count on their errand being aided by war or force. They must pass into the domain of the enemy far from aid. Do you still hold to your word, Frodo, that you will be the ring-bearer?" "I do," said Frodo. "I will go with Sam." "Then I cannot help you much, not even with counsel," said Elrond. "I can foresee very little of your road, and how your task is to be achieved I do not know. The shadow has crept now to the feet of the mountains, and draws nigh even to the borders of the Grey Flood, and under the shadow all is dark to me. You will meet many foes, some open and some disguised, and you may find friends upon your way when you least look for it. I will send out messages such as I can contrive to those whom I know in the wide world, but so perilous are the lands now become that some may well miscarry or come no quicker than you yourself. And I will choose companions to go with you as far as they will or fortune allows. The number must be few, since your hope is in speed and secrecy. Had I a host of elves in armor of the elder days, it would avail little save to arouse the power of Mordor. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. With you and your faithful servant Gandalf will go, for this shall be his great task, and maybe the end of his labors. For the rest they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall be for the elves, and Gimli son of Gloin for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. For men you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely." "Strider!" cried Frodo. "Yes," he said with a smile. "I ask leave once again to be your companion, Frodo." "I would have begged you to come," said Frodo, "only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir." "I am," said Aragorn, "and the sword that was broken shall be reforged ere I set out to war. But your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore Boromir will also be in the company. He is a valiant man."
Yeah. Okay, I want to pause here and reflect on how basically Elrond is voicing Tolkien's conclusions on what needs to happen in the story after long and careful reflection that lasted rather longer than 2 months. The original company had been 7 and not 9, and neither elves nor dwarves were included for their first couple years of composition. It's really strange to reflect on how different a story that might have been, because it feels so clearly like the necessary, the only possible decision. Otherwise, I like how thorough Elrond's instructions are. They connect. Every time Elrond talks, he's sort of a bridge to the first age, a bridge to the elder days. He brings them into the present as he's reflecting on this world that is no longer known to him, is no longer under his control, and yet he's not abandoned all agency within it. So he anticipates a lot of potential eventualities. He establishes some clear limits on what Frodo can and should do with the ring here and elsewhere. And he also, shows a lot of foresight and the limits of his sight, which is interesting. Is when he says, "I can see a lot, but I can't see under the shadow." He's making a veiled reference, I think, to the ring that he wears. I think. But anyway, any thoughts on all this, Josh?
I have to work my Elrond voice. I don't know what my Elrond voice should sound like.
Well, just don't say Mr. Anderson, because then we're right into Hugo Weaving, range.
Exactly.
He did fine, but
I hadn't thought of that in years, and then as I started reading this, it came back into.
And then you resist it, and you're like, I don't know where I am with this voice. Yeah.
Well, what saved me is when he says, "And under the shadow, all is dark to me," and then I instantly heard Yoda's voice saying, "The dark side clouds everything." So, thank you, Yoda.
Hang on. Under the shadow, dark to me, all is. Or something.
Perfect. So, you see this with Galadriel too, how Elrond and Galadriel have the foresight, and they can see a lot, but they also know what they can't see, and when that foresight is helpful or not helpful. And I think what I like about his instructions is that he's not micromanaging. He's just saying this is what you should do. This is what I can say, and there's not much beyond that.
Right.
But nothing wasted either.
But also, he's functioning as the authority, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
He assigns Gandalf what to do. He's exercising the stewardship here at this time, because he's about to hand it over to the men, but he is the elf in charge. I wish I could retract that phrase, but he is the representative of the firstborn of the Eldar. He's not the king, but he's the lord of the house, and therefore it falls to him. The presidency of this falls to him. Dr. Berzer and I talked about that a little bit. It's interesting. He's still presiding. He's still giving the directions.
Right.
All right. Anything else, Josh, or shall we continue?
Let's continue.
All right. So we're just moving on from where we left off. There remain 2 more to be found, said Elrond. These I will consider. Of my household I may find some that it seems good to me to send. But that will leave no place for us, cried Pippin in dismay. We don't want to be left behind. We want to go with Frodo. That is because you do not understand and cannot imagine what lies ahead, said Elrond. Neither does Frodo, said Gandalf, unexpectedly supporting Pippin. Nor do any of us see clearly. It is true that if these hobbits understood the danger, they would not dare to go. But they would still wish to go, or wish that they dared, and be shamed and unhappy. I think, Elrond, that in this matter it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom. Even if you chose for us an elf lord such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by the power that is in him. You speak gravely, said Elrond, but I am in doubt. The Shire I forebode is not free now from peril. In these 2 I had thought to send back there as messengers, to do what they could according to the fashion of their country, to warn the people of their danger. In any case, I judge that the younger of these 2, Peregrine Took, should remain. My heart is against his going. Then, Master Elrond, you will have to lock me in prison or send me home tied in a sack, said Pippin, for otherwise I shall follow the company. Let it be so, then. You shall go, said Elrond, and he sighed. Now the tale of 9 is filled. In 7 days the company must depart. All right, Josh, I want to give you the first chance to give reflections on this, but I have some thoughts, obviously.
I think this is so important and so in keeping with the character of the story, for it to not be, we've got a whole wonderful book about the exploits of the Noldor and what the elves can do and have done, but the theme of the Lord of the Rings is change and great deeds being done not by the mighty but by the most lowly, unlikely person. So of course it has to be Pippin and Merry. It wouldn't make any sense if Glorfindel was going along, and I think that it's Gandalf who jumps in, because who knows hobbits better than Gandalf, and so trusting rather to their friendship than to great wisdom.
Yeah. This is Gandalf's great toss, his great gamble. Choosing the weak and small things of the world to confound the wisdom of the wise. No, I like what you said. You know, we have a whole book about the Noldor, and it's really important that they are not playing an active role in the quest. They are deferring to men, and really to the least of men, to the hobbits. Uh, and from the Orthodox perspective, you know, this is happening on the day that's close to the Sunday of the forefathers. You know, that rogues gallery of human beings that somehow are counted blessed to to be the ancestors of God Himself, become human. I don't know if that's present in the Catholic calendar as well, but it's fitting, and it's beautiful, and it's right. It fits within the frame of the story. It as you say, it's the whole point. And it's right. It's good and it's beautiful to see Elrond still entrusted with the decision, but deferring to Gandalf's judgment, Gandalf's recommendation. But I love the line. You know, how does Elrond say, "Are you serious?" He says, "You speak gravely."
But I am in doubt. The other thing that I thought about here is that this is maybe my pet theory, and I've tried to think a lot about the foresight and the prophecy that you see throughout here. I think that Elrond has a little bit of foresight into what will happen in Moria, and is aware that if Pippin goes, he's going to throw a rock down a well and wake up some stuff that might not have otherwise been woken up, and therefore Gandalf will fall in Moria. And he's maybe subconsciously trying to subvert that. I don't know if that holds up, but I think that's an interesting take, or at least a way to read it. Even though he does explain that he wants to send them back to the Shire, but he does single out Pippin. His heart is against his going.
Yeah, you know, stuff is going to happen because of Pippin. Pain and sorrow happens because of Pippin's foolishness, and yet also Pippin's earnestness and good intent, you know, proves more telling in the end. I like your reading that there's something more there. I'd read it simply as Elrond's soft-heartedness. He doesn't want to send a child on this journey, and he sees Pippin especially as effectively a child. He's like, what? Fine, I'll defer to men. I gotta defer to men. It is their time. We're fading. We're letting go of the potential of the rings, of their power. They might. We think they're going to lose their power, and everything we've built up is going to go away, and we'll have to go into the west. Fine, I get it. Men, Aragorn, I know. Boromir, fine. Gandalf, wizard, whatever he is. Whether Elrond knows that in full, he seems to. He's able to defer to all of them and to let them take the role. Frodo's the one who's carrying the ring, so he has to go. Fine. But this child? I'm benched for this child? Glorfindel is, a combination of incredulity and care for the young and innocent. But I think you're probably right. There is a foresight in Elrond, and he may well be, seeing evil will come of this. Anyway, all of this happens, as we said, on December 18th, which leaves barely a week for some rather dicey smith work. Elves reforging the work of First Age Telkar. Josh, would you read this?
The sword of Elendil was forged anew by elvish smiths, and on its blade was traced a device of 7 stars set between the crescent moon and the rayed sun, and about them was written many runes. For Aragorn, son of Arathorn, was going to war upon the marches of Mordor. Very bright was that sword when it was made whole again. The light of the sun shone redly in it, and the light of the moon shone cold, and its edge was hard and keen. And Aragorn gave it a new name and called it Andúril, Flame of the West.
So yeah, this is a big deal, and also it's not really a big deal. It's just a sword. Maybe it's a big deal in a nerdy way, or perhaps a poetic way. It doesn't really matter fundamentally to the story that Aragorn is carrying a sword that's thousands of years old, except perhaps when he shows himself to Sauron in the Palantir with the sword that had overthrown Sauron. But at the same time, it conveys this passage, it conveys a strong sense of history and gravity to Aragorn. Maybe I'm just arguing with myself because I love this passage so much. It's the sword. It's reforged. It's amazing. It has a new name. It's got runes in it. It's so cool. Anyway, I should also note, whatever I feel and think about the movies, the artists at Weta Workshop, whatever it is, they did a really good job with the props, and I love their version of Anduril. It's probably the best parts of the movie.
I won't disagree with that. I always thought it was wild to have this sword that Telkar wrought in the deeps of time, and all of a sudden these random elvish smiths who apparently live in Rivendell, we didn't know that they had elvish smiths there. They just reforge it.
They are Noldor. They make swords. It gets them in trouble, sense. But they make swords.
Right. Right. And then, of course, when I was younger, I would think, well, why did they reforge it earlier? Surely this would have been useful over the last 1,000 years or so. And then, you get the sense reading Tolkien that things can be made once, and if they're destroyed, then they pass away, and they can't be remade. And that's stated explicitly in the Silmarillion with Feanor and the Silmarils. If he breaks them, they can't remake them. It would break him. And he could only do that once. Same with Yavanna and the trees. And here's the sword being reforged, and it's back. And it happened so quickly in just this short paragraph. But I was listening through the books again to kind of prep for this, and it struck me every time Aragorn shows up and reveals himself, the sword is as much a part of him as his heritage of being descended from Elendil. It's I am Elendil's heir with Elendil's sword, and once the story moves to Rohan and Gondor, all he has to do is say, "Here is the sword that was broken." And people know exactly what it is, and they look at it with awe. So there's something. It feels incredibly important to me, and you see maybe that surface a bit when he reveals himself to Sauron. Is not just saying, "Hey, I'm descended from Isildur." And also here's the sword, the sword that cut the ring from your finger.
Right. It's almost the sword says almost, all of your effort to stamp out the line of the kings of men, which has been your 3,000 plus year program. Guess what? Try again. Try harder. Come at me, bro. Because I'm coming for you. Fair enough. It is important. I don't know how this will work because I've got a green screen and a book, but a bookshelf and stuff. But I do have to grab something. Because I actually own a replica of Anduril, and if there's not a time to show it, this is... I don't know what is the time to show it. So let's see if I can do this. All right, and if it'll show up. It's a long sword. But it is pretty cool, and they do the runes are on it. These are the dwarven runes, I believe. So, this is Telkar, and it says Narsil, I think, and then on the hilt we get elven runes, that say, this is Anduril. Anyway, it's a nice piece. It's a terrible sword. It's not tempered well, and I could probably bend it and break it. But anyway, cool.
Does the light of the sun shine redly in it?
I've never carried it outside to sea. If you can hear that, I'm away from my microphone. I'll say that again. I've never carried it outside to see whether the light of the sun and the moon shone redly and cold in it. But it's a goofy thing to have on my wall, but also kind of fun. Alrighty. So, moving on. We need to read the conversation between Frodo and Bilbo on the last day before the departure. Christmas Eve. I'd love to read the whole thing, but I think for the sake of brevity, we can just recommend everyone make a point to read it out loud to themselves whenever they read it. Read it out loud to yourself. It's just a beautiful piece of writing. I love how Bilbo stabs Sting deep into the wooden beam with little effort when he gets the sword out and gives it to Frodo. It conveys a lot about Bilbo and Sting and everything in a very efficient way. Bilbo regrets not going. He still is like, I can still wield a sword. I can still do stuff, but here it is for you. What we do need to do here, as a matter of the commitment that I made a while ago, is we need to read the poetry in full. So let's read Bilbo's poem. Would you begin, Josh, and then we can take it in turns, stanza by stanza.
I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies and summers that have been.
Of yellow leaves and gossamer and autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair.
I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see.
For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood, in every spring, there is a different green.
I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago, and people who will see a world that I shall never know.
But all the while, I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. First word goes to you on this one, Josh.
This is one of those poems that I didn't really read a lot of the poetry 25 years ago, or 20 years ago. But I read this one now, and I had to ask, how old was Tolkien when he wrote this? Because if I could write poetry, I could write something like this now, but I could not have written it as a younger man or a boy.
I remember something I think Father Andrew said when he came on a few episodes ago. I don't remember what he read, what he chose to read, but he read it kind of reflecting on the thoughts of an older man, as you're still young, still healthy, but also conscious of joints creaking and age coming and children growing and things changing, and other people are stepping into the limelight, and our role in kind of the leading part of the drama of our life is starting to be superseded by others, and death is coming, and we're listening for others now. This is evocative of that kind of thing that I think he was talking about. It fits Bilbo so perfectly.
I thought about this a little bit after writing some notes down. This is interesting to think of in the context of Bilbo's lines in the opening of the book, where he says, "I feel thin and stretched," and you see that how he's stretched thin, and now he's feeling his age. Bilbo wouldn't have said this poem at the beginning of the book, but now he can.
Yeah. I mean, the structure is nice. It's basically three. I sit beside the fire and thinks. He thinks of the past and things he has seen. He thinks of the future, of all the things he hasn't seen. And then he thinks himself between the past of others who never saw his day and the future that he's not seeing because he's waiting for other people to come back again. There's a beautiful symmetry to it, and he's at the center of it, and yet realizing, being at the center, now he's passive, and others are out doing things that once he was doing himself, and his role in the center is shrinking, perhaps. You had asked in the notes how old Tolkien was when he wrote it. I think it was written or drafted around 1940. It doesn't show up in the second draft, which is written I think around 1940, 41, but it's not included in the draft, but it had been drafted and was being considered, I think, at that time. So I think 1940 is about right. And he was about a little shy of 50 at that point. He was born, 1891, 1893? I get mixed up, but 47, 50, 49, something like that. But I think your question, what age was Tolkien, is exactly the right one. So often Bilbo serves as a stand-in for Tolkien himself. And to my mind, he does that more than any other character. I know Tolkien identifies with Faramir, and he gave him his dream of the sea, but the characterization of Bilbo, we see so much more of him. It's so particular, it's so deeply heartfelt, so much in line with one who could have written the whole legendarium, and of course the frame narrative sets it exactly that way. This is the story that Bilbo wrote, or at least sketched out, and Frodo finished. And the Silmarillion, well, that's all Bilbo's voice. So Bilbo really is Tolkien's counterpart within the story.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. We've been talking for 2 hours, and we're actually finally leaving Rivendell. We won't read all of this, but there is a lot that needs to be read. Would you begin this, Josh?
Yep. It was a cold, gray day near the end of December. The east wind was streaming through the bare branches of the trees and seething in the dark pines on the hills. Ragged clouds were hurrying overhead, dark and low. As the cheerless shadows of the early evening began to fall, the company made ready to set out. They were to start at dusk, for Elrond counseled them to journey under cover of night as often as they could, until they were far from Rivendell. "You should fear the many eyes of the servants of Sauron," he said. "I do not doubt that news of the discomfiture of the riders has already reached him, and he will be filled with wrath. Soon now his spies on foot and wing will be abroad in the northern lands. Even of the sky above you must beware as you go on your way."
Right. So the sky above, we'll talk about that because something flies over them later on. But before we get there, the rest of this isn't that important. Just this description of the weather on the day that they leave. But in its unobtrusiveness, I think it conceals something intentionally that was rather important to Tolkien. That the actual date of departure is Christmas Day. It's December 25th, which is interesting because the departure from Bag End is basically the fall equinox. It's also the leave-taking of the Feast of the Cross on the Orthodox calendar, if I remember my liturgical calendar correctly. So Tolkien does the astronomical thing for the departure, but he doesn't do the astronomical thing for the departure from Rivendell. They don't leave on the winter solstice, December 21st, 22nd. They rather leave a couple of days later on the Feast of the Lord's Nativity. This certainly is not an accident. In the earliest drafts, they'd left in early November, as we'd noted. but I think it's worth discussing the significance of this. Why it is that Tolkien picks this date for their departure. What do you think, Josh?
I think you talked about this a bit with Brad Berzer
in our first episode, way back at the beginning, episode 112.
Yeah, that seems like ages ago, but I remember it. It was a delightful conversation, and to me, just kind of on the surface level, this is sort of like an Easter egg that Tolkien throws in there, and that's again one thing that I like about Tolkien. The Easter egg is here. They're going to start this quest on the feast of the Lord's Nativity. That's the kind of Easter egg that I like to find in a book.
Yeah. It's a nice example of what he means when he is it the I forget who he's writing to when he says the Lord of the Rings is a fundamentally Christian and Catholic work, unconsciously in the writing and then consciously in the revision. Okay, unconsciously there are themes that are present, but consciously they're not some random day in November, Christmas Day. That's when they leave. So
yeah,
we'll come back to this as they actually ride out of the valley. But let's move on. After this, we get a nice description of everyone's gear. Tabletop RPG players rejoice. Exactly what they're all carrying, if not the stats of everything, except that Anduril is obviously a top level, mythical weapon. Purple or yellow or whatever if it's a video game. And then we have the foreshadowing of Boromir's winding his horn and Elrond warning him not to do so again until you stand once more on the borders of your land and dire need is on you, which is to say, don't wind it again until you are at Rauros Falls and the orcs are attacking. How does Elrond know that? This is surely a moment not just of foreshadowing by the author, but of Elrond's foresight, as we were talking before. We see that Frodo is indeed wearing Bilbo's mail coat, but hidden, as Bilbo had asked. And we see Bill the pony is being brought along. And then we get a point of view from Sam, as he's going over everything he packed and everything he hasn't. And it includes his reflections on rope and his forgetfulness about bringing it. We also see Aragorn sitting with his head bowed to his knees. Only Elrond knew fully what this hour meant to him, says the narrator. And we have no clue what that means because we haven't read the appendixes yet. Now, this is fun because it's actually a preservation of an original line that's written about Trotter, because Trotter the Hobbit sat at this moment with his head bowed to his knees. But the line about Elrond knowing what it means to him is absent because that's only added after there's something for it to reflect. After Aragorn has become a man and after he and Arwen have pledged themselves to one another, but they will only marry if Aragorn gains the throne of the reunited realms of Gondor and Arnor. This is what it means to Aragorn. Elrond knows that, but we haven't got a clue. But it's a nice bit of foreshadowing. I do like too that every time we get a direct point of view of Sam's thoughts, I think it's important that we note that this is Tolkien telling us this is a part of the story that after Frodo had finished it, Sam, or maybe one of Sam's children or grandchildren, went back and added their father's reminiscences to the story, and that's what came down in the manuscripts to us in the critical edition of the Red Book of Westmarch that Tolkien is translating for us here. This is Sam's edition from his own memories. Yeah. Anyway, any thoughts on all this, Josh?
I like Sam's voice, and one of the interesting things that Tolkien does here when he's given us Sam's point of view is the line, but not near enough, I'll warrant. It's not in quotes. It's there as so I couldn't use that in trivia if I wanted to. The speaker is obviously Sam, but no one's actually speaking. Or would you say that the speaker here is Tolkien translating it, or Sam's children, as you were saying? That's that's a fun little way of writing it. That you get Sam's voice even when he's not speaking.
That's delightful. I didn't even catch that. Yeah, the parentheses, not near enough on warrant, not even in quotes. It's just Sam's thoughts as a paragraph in the book. It's a little giveaway. Who's the actual hero of the story?
Right.
It's Sam. Yeah, it's amazing.
And then I've got some other thoughts that I don't know if they're really very well formed, but I found myself focusing on the prophecy and the foresight that you see throughout this chapter and really throughout the whole story. But this is a fascinating one where Elrond basically tells Boromir what's going to happen, but we don't really understand it, and I think Boromir responds correctly and just says, well, this is what I do. He doesn't say, you know what, maybe I'll leave my horn here and then I'll be okay. There's not a reaction to say, well, I'm going to try to subvert this prophecy. He knows enough not to do that because that's how the prophecies always come true.
Yeah, he's going to be himself as best as he can. Yeah, I really like that, actually. Boromir is Boromir. What you see is what you get.
Yep.
All right. So then we actually see them leave, and we get one of my absolute favorite conversational exchanges. So I'll give it to you, Josh, because I'm a generous guy like that. And also, I did enough unpleasant things to you when we were children, so I owe you one.
If you say so, I'll take it because I also love this one. At that moment, Elrond came out with Gandalf, and he called the company to him. "This is my last word," he said in a low voice. "The ring-bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only then in gravest need. The others go with him as free companions to help him on his way. You may tarry, or come back, or turn aside into other paths as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy will it be to withdraw, yet no oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will. For you do not yet know the strength of your hearts, and you cannot foresee what each may meet upon the road." "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens," said Gimli. "Maybe," said Elrond, "but let him not vow to walk in the dark who has not seen the nightfall." "Yet sworn word may strengthen quaking heart," said Gimli. "Or break it," said Elrond. "Look not too far ahead, but go now with good hearts. Farewell, and may the blessing of elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces." Good luck," cried Bilbo, stuttering with the cold. "I don't suppose you will be able to keep a diary, Frodo, my lad, but I shall expect a full account when you get back. And don't be too long. Farewell."
So then I'll read this bit so you can get the first word reflecting on all this. Many others of Elrond's household stood in the shadows and watched them go, bidding them farewell with soft voices. There was no laughter and no song or music. At last they turned away and faded silently into the dusk. They crossed the bridge and wound slowly up the long, steep paths that led out of the cloven vale of Rivendell, and they came at length to the high moor where the wind hissed through the heather. Then, with one glance at the last homely house twinkling below them, they strode away, far into the night.
So I love this one too, and this is one that stuck with me from the first time I read it. Or maybe not the first time, but for a long time. Just the wisdom that Tolkien has here, and most recently, I think it's in Dr. Mamalakis's book, The Parenting Toward the Kingdom, where he says, "Don't don't make your kids promise something, or maybe it's something else, but it seems like something he would have said there. And that's something that I actually think I probably knew instinctively as a parent, to not say, okay, you screwed up, but promise not to do it again and everything's going to be fine, because you can't do that. And he says it so eloquently here.
The importance of the freedom of the companions. And he leaves Frodo as free as he can, while also impressing upon him the gravity, the enormity of what he carries. And the parameters, the bounds that he gives them, that he gives to Frodo, they're helpful. Like, this is what you can do. You have people that can help you in grave necessity to carry the burden. But you shouldn't use that except in gravest need, and give it to no one else. This goes one place and one place only. You know what you've accepted, you spoke and you offered to carry it freely, and we charge you to fulfill what you spoke and what you said. But everyone else goes with you freely, and yet they do go with you. It's beautiful. And that theme of freedom, the freedom of the will, the necessity to not constrain or force it, especially not for good or for a perceived good, is so prevalent throughout.
Right.
Yeah. Myself, I like the note that there was no laughter or song or music. Now, on the one hand, it's Rivendell, so we're contrasting this with the tra-la-la-lolly, come back to the valley departure, perhaps from the Hobbit. But also, it's Christmas Day. It's a day when there's supposed to be laughter and song and music and joy. But it is Christmas. It's just not Christmas yet. It's a nice little brief meditation in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 9 words, there was no laughter and no song or music. A 9-word veiled meditation on the incarnation in the mythical pre-incarnational age that yearns for the joy of the incarnation. And we know that Tolkien thought a lot about the incarnation and how it would connect to his legendarium, because we see him develop it all as far as he thinks it's right to go in the Athrabeth. Now, here's a question. Do you recall from your reading of the History of Middle-earth stuff, Josh, which draft does that line about no laughter, song, or music show up in, or did you not have it?
I don't.
I wonder if I can even find it real quick here, because it would be in the let's see, it's the second. Yeah, the ring goes south. Okay, that's chapter 24.
Yeah, page 417 for me.
It is there.
That is there, yeah.
There was no laughter. Many others of Elrond. So it's there in the original draft, even though it's not Christmas. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is just saying no tra-la-la-lolly, but then he changes it to be December 25th, and now it's there for me to see whether he intended it originally that way or not.
Whether he intended it or not, whether it was originally intended that way, it certainly fits, and I love that connection. So,
anyway, with that, we're off. Not to see the wizard, but much more terrible things. They travel for 2 weeks, and then they reach Holland. I really love the description of their arrival there. There's a lot that just continues directly what he's been doing in the previous scene. Would you start out with this for us, Josh, and then we'll go back and forth a bit.
Away in the south, Frodo could see the dim shapes of lofty mountains that seemed now to stand across the path that the company was taking. At the left of this high range rose 3 peaks. The tallest and nearest stood up like a tooth tipped with snow. Its great, bare, northern precipice was still largely in the shadow, but where the sunlight slanted upon it, it glowed red. Gandalf stood at Frodo's side and looked out under his hand. "We have done well," he said. "We have reached the borders of the country that men call Hollin. Many elves lived here in happier days, when Eregion was its name. 45 leagues as the crow flies we have come, though many long miles further our feet have walked. The land and the weather will be milder now, but perhaps all the more dangerous. Dangerous or not, a real sunrise is mighty welcome, said Frodo, throwing back his hood and letting the morning light fall on his face. But the mountains are ahead of us, said Pippin. We must have turned eastwards in the night. No, said Gandalf, but you see further ahead in the clear light. Beyond those peaks the range bends round southwest. There are many maps in Elrond's house, but I suppose you never thought to look at them. Yes, I did sometimes, said Pippin, but I don't remember them. Frodo has a better head for that sort of thing.
So I was showing the map, but I'll continue here with Gimli and his commentary on maps. I need no map, said Gimli, who had come up with Legolas and was gazing out before him with a strange light in his deep eyes. There is a land where our fathers worked of old, and we have wrought the image of those mountains into many works of metal and of stone, and into many songs and tales. They stand tall in our dreams, Baraz, Zirak, Shathur. Only once before have I seen them from afar in waking life, but I know them and their names. For under them lies Khazad-dûm, the Dwarodelf that is now called, the Black Pit, Moria in the Elvish tongue. Yonder stands Barazimbar, the Red Horn, cruel Caradhras, and beyond him are Silvertine and Cloudyhead, Celebdil the White, and Fanuitho the Grey, that we call Zirak Zigil and Bundushathur. There the misty mountains divide, and between their arms lies the deep-shadowed valley which we cannot forget, Azanul Bizar, the Dimril Dale, which the elves call Nanduhirion. It is for the Dimril Dale that we are making, said Gandalf. If we climb the pass that is called the Redhorn Gate, onto the far side of Caradhras, we shall come down by the Dimril Stair into the deep vale of the dwarves. There lies the Mirror, and there the river Silverlord rises in its icy springs. Dark is the water of Kheled Zaram, said Gimli, and cold are the springs of Kibil Nala. My heart trembles at the thought that I may see them soon. May you have joy of the sight, my good dwarf, said Gandalf. But whatever you may do, we at least cannot stay in that valley. We must go down the Silverlord into the secret woods, and so to the great river, and then...
He paused. Yes, and where then? Asked Merry. To the end of the journey, in the end, said Gandalf. We cannot look too far ahead. Let us be glad that the first stage is safely over. I think we will rest here not only today, but tonight as well. There is a wholesome air about Hollin. Much evil must befall a country before it wholly forgets the elves, if once they dwelt there. That is true, said Legolas. But the elves of this land were of a race strange to us of the sylvan folk, and the trees and the grass do not now remember them. Only I hear the stones lament them. Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us, but they are gone. They are gone. They sought the havens long ago.
All right. So there are a few reasons I wanted to read this. First of all, the description of the mountains, and especially the mountains of Moria. Tolkien does such a beautiful job here depicting both the beauty of the scene to the one who's never thought of it before, just looking at his mountains, which is Frodo's perspective, but the deep love of Gimli for the place and how he does it with language, with strange and beautiful names that become meaningful in the reading of them. There's an absolute mastery of language at work here, and it loses nothing for noticing that it's done on purpose, just because Tolkien loves language, and all he's doing is exercising that love to the fullest extent of his abilities. How he works that with all the different names for these peaks, as Gimli recites them, it's like overflowing, pouring out of Gimli, and this fountain, this welling up of pent up yearning from his whole life. It's incredible. Second, by this point, with a very few lines from Gimli and Legolas here, and then in the exchange with Elrond that we read at the departure from Rivendell, now we know who they both are. Their essential characters are sketched. Gimli is a poet, and he's a knight. Legolas is a poet as well, with a deep love for the land and therefore a deep sorrow for its wounds. The two of them are still convinced that they're enemies. We'll see that in the next chapter. But Tolkien has already showed us before they ever clash that they're of a kind. It's incredible. Anyway, what do you note about this passage, Josh?
I love all of that, and I kind of lost my Gimli voice tonight, so I'm glad you read that one. But
I couldn't get deep enough either.
It's a beautiful passage. I love the I don't think you can call it banter between Pippin and Gandalf because it's not banter, but their little clashes keep happening, and Pippin is relentless. He's like, oh yeah, there were maps, but I don't remember them.
I didn't remember
and that's okay.
I got Frodo along. I'm cool. I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah. Let's see.
And that actually comes back again. Merry says the same thing to Pippin. If you'd bothered to look at a map, you'd know where we are. We're in the forest now. And Pippin's like, I don't know. It's all just world, whatever.
And Pippin never really... it takes a long time for him to give that up. And maybe he never really does. I guess he does. But I'm thinking of when he's finally meeting Denethor and Gandalf has given him instructions and Pippin's just totally clueless. It's like, what? The king? Aragorn? Like, yep. You should have looked at a map. You should have paid attention to Aragorn. But well, here we are.
And Gandalf's like, I can't take you anywhere. And then out of nowhere, Pippin does the absolute right thing, the only the only possible thing, which we actually see a little foreshadowing of before too long, when Boromir picks him up. And anyway, but we're not there yet. All right. We got to keep moving. So, yeah, Aragorn notices the birds are silent. They all felt like they'd arrived somewhere good, but something's not right. Sam goes on watch. The crows fly over. The fire is canceled. Warm food is canceled. Pippin loses his chance for both. He's complaining. And then we get Sam's reflections on Gimli's poetical waxing about the mountains of Moria. Would you read this, Josh? Because it's a short little bit from Sam, but it's great.
Yep. But I'm beginning to think it's time we got a sight of that fiery mountain and saw the end of the road, so to speak.
Hang on, I'm going to bring the map up again. Because... All right, go ahead.
I thought at first that this here Redhorn, or whatever its name is, might be it, until Gimli spoke his piece. A fair jaw-cracker dwarf language must be. Maps conveyed nothing to Sam's mind, and all distances in these strange lands seemed so vast that he was quite out of his reckoning.
They're barely a third of the way there, a quarter of the way there. It sounds like it's about time we got there.
That's a nice callback to Bilbo when they get to the Misty Mountains and he says, "Is that the mountain?"
The mountain with his eyes as wide as saucers. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Again, kind of a little piece showing us who's the actual hero here. It's veiled, but it's starting to come out bit by bit. Right. I think this is something that Peter Jackson may have just missed. Sam, in the books, Sam and also Pippin, they're the source of humor for most of the book. You get jokes, wry comments from others, but the laugh out loud moments are Sam and Pippin. A fair jaw cracker. And then...
And he's a great stand-in for the audience, too.
Right.
In case anyone's like, what did I just read? And then Sam's like, here, let me say that.
And then gradually, slowly, without really even noticing it, he turns out to be the hero. the one who's the one left standing, the one there at the end of the book, and you're like, wait, was this book about Sam? Where did that start? And it's all blossoms out of that. He's the comic relief. And okay, I don't buy the idea that audiences can't recognize more subtle types of humor, and therefore we have to make the dwarf the uncouth bearded Scotsman with height jokes and drunken nonsense, and make the younger hobbits silly teenagers to get humor. I don't know whether Jackson didn't recognize what was there, or didn't think he was up to the task of depicting Sam's transformation from the source of humor to the hero in real time, like Tolkien does. But something profound is lost, and I can't buy that it's just that wouldn't work on film, because some directors could do that. Anyway, what do you think, Josh? Am I being too hard on Peter Jackson?
Well, I really enjoyed the episode that you've done with Zach Heller, and I love hearing his take on the movies, and that's helped me appreciate them a bit more for what they are. But I would never accuse anyone of being too hard on Peter Jackson. So I think I totally agree. The humor's there. Use the humor that's in the book that you're translating to film, and I think you totally missed the mark with Gimli. And I hadn't thought about the height jokes, but there is stuff about Gimli's height, and it's not funny. It's Éomer insulting him, saying if your head were a little higher off the ground, I'd cut it off. Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, maybe it's a little bit funny, but it's not meant to be funny. It's a meeting of people who should be friends, and they're about to fight each other. Yeah,
it's a tension that is resolved at the end when they have their,
right.
It's doing something different. But yeah. You've talked to me before about how much you love Rob Inglis, and I strangely have to confess, I've read these books aloud myself several times. I've never listened to anyone's audiobook of it, and I realize I'm missing out. I need to listen to Rob Inglis sometime.
Yeah, I can only hear that passage now read in his voice. Well, I just listened to it a week or so ago, but he delivers it really well. And if I were going to try to read it, I would try to copy what he did, and fail miserably because I'm not a voice actor or anything. But he there's all this gravity, and there's sorrow and loss and longing in what Gimli's saying, and it all starts with that strange light in his deep eyes.
Yeah. And there's a chivalry in Gimli too that's just sadly completely missing in the movies. There's so much of at least what seems like Tolkien's ideal of the knight, in him, and we start seeing it really as soon as Gimli has any spoken lines with this thing about the oath, and he's like, rah rah, let's do the fight. We're on a quest. I know the quest. Let's fulfill the quest. But we get the big payoff. We get a big payoff when we get to Lorien, and he finds his lady, and we have Tolkien's idealization of courtly love, because there's nothing romantic in it. Anyway, what was done to this most medieval of characters in the movies is sad, and it makes me mad. Anyway.
Too.
A little later, we also have what surely seems like the first appearance of a winged Nazgul, even though the other notes would indicate that the winged Nazgul don't appear or cross the river till later. I don't know what to think. I feel like it must be wrong. I don't know what else this could be, but then I have a reputation for being, if there are categories, Maya, Ainur, Valar, so maybe it's just me. Regardless, let's read the passage just to think on it. I'll read this one, and you can comment. It was the cold, chill hour before the first stir of dawn, and the moon was low. Frodo looked up at the sky. Suddenly, he saw or felt a shadow pass over the high stars, as if for a moment they faded and then flashed out again. He shivered. "Did you see anything pass over?" he whispered to Gandalf, who was just ahead. "No, but I felt it, whatever it was," he answered. "It may be nothing, only a wisp of thin cloud." "It was moving fast then," muttered Aragorn, "and not with the wind." What are your thoughts?
Well, as I said in my notes, I want to be really careful here. I don't want this to go the way of Tom Bombadil and Balrogs and those deep questions to which countless words have been devoted on the internet.
Wings and no wings and what have you.
Right. Obviously, it was a Nazgul. No, it couldn't be a Nazgul. It's interesting that Christopher Tolkien couldn't explain this. It's just in the notes like, well, this doesn't seem right because the Nazgul weren't supposed to cross the river. I was thinking about this as I got to that part of Two Towers, and I think there are two passages where this is stated. And one of them, it seems a little bit ambivalent, where it could be that they weren't supposed to cross the river, but they could cross the river. And then the other one, it's a little bit more explicit, and I didn't have a chance to pull those up.
What I was remembering is, doesn't Grishnak or someone say, they're not allowed to cross the river yet? But what would the orcs know for certain of the orders that had been given to the Nazgul?
Right.
But I was assuming that Christopher Tolkien was referring more to the notes about. I think there's something in the notes, maybe the calendar, the tracking of the dates. I'm blanking on the right term for it. I feel like I remember a comment the first time that a Nazgul crosses the river.
Oh, right.
But I had wondered if maybe there's a distinction between crossing the river to do stuff versus crossing the river just to fly around and look for things high up in the air.
Right.
Invisible to anyone, not revealing or endangering themselves. Anyway, I interrupted you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out my thoughts. But I think that it definitely could be a Nazgul, which is essentially what Elrond said when they left Rivendell, which is that he already has his spies in the air. It could also just be a random bird. Maybe it was one. Well, yeah, now I'm speculating.
There is that line. We're not going to read it, but there are more evil things than Sauron's, in the world, and and these mountains were a problem before
right.
before Sauron ever came back. Anyway, yeah. All right. So from here we get to the assault on Caradhras, and I dearly love to read the whole thing. There's so much that's happening simultaneously through the passage. Gandalf and Aragorn are in tension and anxiety about the course of the which way will they take through the whole thing, and all the hobbits are responding differently to the snow, which interestingly none of them have ever seen in such volumes. We can't read it all, but I think we do need to read this exchange as the snow is falling between Boromir and Gimli and Gandalf. Would you read it, Josh?
"I wonder if this is a contrivance of the enemy," said Boromir. "They say in my land that he can govern the storms and the mountains of shadow that stand upon the borders of Mordor. He has strange powers and many allies." "His arm has grown long indeed," said Gimli. "If he can draw snow down from the north to trouble us here, 300 leagues away." His arm has grown long," said Gandalf.
Yeah, the indeed is implied. So you found your Gimli voice. That was magnificent.
Thank you.
This is chilling, and it's really effective. Gandalf isn't being dramatic; he's just stating the truth. His arm has grown long, and basically confirming what Boromir says. Yeah, this storm is a contrivance of the enemy. he doesn't do it explicitly, but he's not saying it is, but he's certainly saying it totally could be that Boromir. All the exchange here also helps to retain something that's important in this chapter, because this is really where Boromir shows his strength and his heroism almost more than anywhere else in the story, until he gives his life saving Pippin and Merry, or trying to at the end. He doesn't do a lot that's impressive, have a lot of good lines, through Moria itself, and once you get to Lorien, issues are starting to come out. Someone, I think Father Tim was commenting to me, if you were to do a drinking game with Boromir, and you have to take a drink every time he says the men of Minas Tirith, you would get sozzled really quick. Not that I do drinking games, but in this chapter, Boromir he's magnificent. I think some of this is a holdover from that earlier draft where he's the only man, and therefore he plays the decisive role in their survival of the blizzard. But it's still great stuff, and it gives us a glimpse of the people of Gondor, not just as silken cityfied folk, but as hardy people of the mountains, warriors and travelers. They're impressive folk. And that's I don't know how much that comes across in the movies. They're not, they're civilized, but they're a whole people. They have cities, and they have the mountains, and Boromir's experienced all of these things. Yeah.
I agree, and yet as I think about it, I also disagree a little bit. But well, let me try to flesh that out. I do think this is a great chapter for Boromir. He knows so much. You see his force of will, his knowledge, and his strength. So I think it's a great chapter for him, and I think the interactions he has with Gandalf is what supports the later statement that Gandalf makes to Denethor when he says that he traveled far with Boromir and learned much of his mood. Mm-hmm. But I also think what you see of Boromir is exactly how Faramir describes him, and it shows there's the strength of Boromir, the force of will, but when you read further ahead, you see what's also missing. That the part that you get with Faramir, when you see that other element of the men of Gondor, the lore masters, the wisdom, I do not love the bright sword, I wish I could remember that line better. So I think that's maybe it's not it's missing, and that the absence says something.
I like your point, and I accept the correction. Boromir is not the cityfied person, and that's actually something of a defect to his character. He's the man of action. He's used to being the hero of the story, the leader of men. He shoves his brother aside and takes the journey himself, and because obviously he's the one who should make the journey. And yeah, he would struggle to play second fiddle to anyone. As Faramir said, when Frodo says, "But Boromir was always very respectful of Aragorn and his claims on the," and then Faramir says, "Yeah, but they hadn't got to Minas Tirith and become rivals in her wars yet. I know my brother."
But all that being said, there's nothing wrong with Boromir, and it's fun to see him in his element.
Right. And this is his element.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have a funny quip to anyone who knows me. I apologize for every time my 1-year-old reaches and grabs something for the first time, and I say ominously, "His arm has grown long indeed."
That's amazing.
Might be my most quoted line these days.
Not one to quiz you with. His arm has grown long. About Boromir, I think I'd highlighted it and then didn't end up including it in the script. But there is an interesting moment where I think Gandalf, in the original draft, Gandalf is talking about Boromir as being of a high and lofty line, and saying, "Yeah, Trotter's great. Trotter knows stuff. Trotter also is worth having along. But Boromir, don't underestimate Boromir. He's he's not just a man. He's of a lofty. And in that thinking and that level of the draft, Boromir was the Númenórean, kind of almost like a Faramir character. And then there's immediately a note. Yeah, scratch this. Boromir is a man. He's fine, but Trotter is a man, and he needs to be the one that actually has the lineage and the high and lofty destiny. So it's like this interplay between Boromir the man and Trotter the hobbit man. Part of that playing out in this chapter is what had Tolkien conclude. No. Trotter needs to be Aragorn, as it were.
I don't think I want to spend a lot of time on this, but I think this is the time to voice this thought, this thread that I've been trying to pull on, which is looking at Boromir as a kind of a type of Turin. And the part that always stands out to me now as I read Turin is when the messengers come to Nargothrond and say, "You need to cast down the bridge," and Turin basically says, "Why should I care about the Valar? They've left us and forgotten about us. The only one who matters is Melkor," and rejects any notion of pious faith, and it's kind of dark and despairing. It's maybe more of a pagan relapse of Turin, but I see a little bit of that in Boromir. Boromir knows good and evil. He knows that Gondor and Minas Tirith are good, and that Mordor and Sauron are the enemy. But I don't know if he ever has any expressions of piety or faith in the way that you see immediately with Faramir.
Right. And I think you're right. Boromir is exactly the one who is prepared to, fight to the absolute last with the enemy, including using the arts of the enemy against him. And Faramir, not if I found it by the side of the road would I pick that thing up. Because that's not how the war must be run, must be won. I like that thought. I hadn't thought of associating Turin and Boromir, but I'm not in the line of writing papers on Tolkien. But anyone listening that is, there's a nice term paper or maybe even a thesis. Just make sure you give credit to Josh Cook for it there,
and let me read it.
If you send it to me, I'll pass it along. So, all right. We've gone long. This podcast has also grown long. So I think we probably need to refrain from reading any more long passages. So I'll try to move quickly through this. We do get the fun note when Gandalf lights the fire that "I have written Gandalf is here in signs that all can read from Rivendell to the mouths of Anduin." Grumpy Gandalf is the best Gandalf. And we get Sam grumbling about, "If this is shelter, then one wall and no roof make a house." And we get Legolas running on the surface of the snow to go find the sun, and so on. There's so many beautiful little vignettes. But maybe we should read one more actual exchange to give Boromir his doughty due. So as they find the blizzard was localized, just over them and nowhere else, and they're almost out of it, Gimli gives his interpretation. Would you read this, Josh?
Oh, it is as I said, growled Gimli. It was no ordinary storm. It is the ill will of Caradhras. He does not love elves or dwarves, and that drift was laid to cut off our escape. But happily your Caradhras has forgotten that you have men with you, said Boromir, who came up at that moment. And doughty men, too, if I may say it, though lesser men with spades might have served you better. Still we have thrust a lane through the drift, and for that all here may be grateful who cannot run as light as elves. But how are we to get down there, even if you have cut through the drift, said Pippin, voicing the thought of all the hobbits. Have hope, said Boromir. I am weary, but I still have some strength left, and Aragorn too. We will bear the little folk. The others, no doubt, will make shift to tread the path behind us. Come, Master Peregrine, I will begin with you.
Yes, so we see here actually written in right, Aragorn can carry them too, even in the final draft, which is amazing. This also gives us a nice image of the growing bond between Boromir and the hobbits, and especially Pippin. I like the respect, the dignity that he affords to Pippin. Master Peregrine, not Pipsqueak or something. It nicely foreshadows and anticipates or lays the groundwork, at least for Pippin's oath to Denethor and his coming into his own as a man of the Tower of Guard that Boromir had defended so much. Anyway, other thoughts from you on this, Josh?
I like that too. I think there's always a respect and a nobility and dignity that Boromir has, even if he's just constantly reminding everyone that that's how the men of Minas Tirith act. But it's still there, and I think it's real. It's not an act. This is how he thinks that he should treat people.
This is just him.
Yeah, he doesn't belittle the hobbits. And make fun of them.
Yeah, and we have the negative comparison with Turin, but we also do have Eomer's words about Boromir, much more like one of the Rohirrim than one of the grave men of Minas Tirith. And we love the Rohirrim. We wouldn't necessarily want to trust them being close to the ring because they're not subtle people in that way. But we love the Rohirrim. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think that would be maybe where the Turin comparison breaks down a bit, but
doesn't
hold up.
But also maybe not, because Turin's just a guy. He wants to win. He wants to fight. He knows what he knows. He has a short life, only so much time to win his glory. Those are all basic characteristics of the men of Rohan, of your basic, Anglo-Saxon warrior. And it can go wonderful places to glorious deeds in song, or it can go to really dark places as you seek glory in song and push it too far. And the one who has, greater strength, greater, fame, it doesn't necessarily go well for them. Turin, if he were just, some guy in the army of Dor-Lómen fighting, in the wars of Fingon, if things had gone differently, Turin would be fine. But he's this only guy. He's fostered by Thingol. He ends up having this high and lonely destiny. I just accidentally quoted, Uncle Andrew and Jadis both.
Oh, right.
And then it doesn't go well. All those things that are virtues in a lower, more everyday, circumstance, turn out to be not virtues at all. Maybe. I want to think about that some more. With that, they make it down out of the pass. Caradhras has defeated them. Any final words on the chapter, Josh?
Not at this time of night.
All right. So that's that then. Next time we journey in the dark, although it's night and we're already journeying in the dark, but we need to journey towards bed. So, moving on. Our next act, we get to hear you read to us, and it's always delightful to hear our guests read something that they choose from Tolkien's vast body of work, not necessarily from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So what did you pick for us tonight, Josh?
I don't know if this is just going to be my thing to dig out this this battered volume, and I went pretty obscure, and I always have trouble figuring out what to read. So for this one, I can't remember how I stumbled across it at the 11th hour today, but thinking about Gandalf and what we see of Gandalf and how he interacts with Pippin, that's kind of been the theme that one of the themes that I've keyed in on reading through it. And so I thought I would read the more detailed account of Gandalf that we see here in Unfinished Tales.
Beautiful.
And so this is the ending of a longer passage, and well, it's really a collection of passages that Christopher Tolkien put together. But the last comer was named among the elves Mithrandir, the grey pilgrim, for he dwelt in no place and gathered to himself neither wealth nor followers, but ever went to and fro in the Westlands, from Gondor to Angmar, and from Lindon to Lorien, befriending all folk in times of need. Warm and eager was his spirit, and it was enhanced by the ring Narya, for he was the enemy of Sauron, opposing the fire that devours and wastes with the fire that kindles, and succors in wan hope and in distress. But his joy and his swift wrath were veiled in garments grey as ash, so that only those that knew him well glimpsed the flame that was within. Merry he could be, and kindly to the young and simple, and yet quick at times to sharp speech and the rebuking of folly. But he was not proud, and sought neither power nor praise. And thus far and wide he was beloved among all those that were not themselves proud. Mostly he journeyed unwearyingly on foot, leaning on his staff, and so he was called among men of the north Gandalf, the elf of the wand. For they deemed him, though in error as has been said, to be of elven kind, since he would at times work wonders among them, loving especially the beauty of fire, and yet such marvels he wrought mostly for mirth and delight, and desired not that any should hold him in awe, or take his counsels out of fear. Elsewhere it is told how it was that when Sauron rose again, he also arose and partly revealed his power, and becoming the chief mover of the resistance to Sauron was at last victorious, and brought all by vigilance and labor to that end which the Valar, under the one that is above them, had designed. Yet it is said that in the ending of the task for which he came, he suffered greatly, and was slain, and being sent back from death for a brief while, was clothed then in white, and became a radiant flame, yet veiled still save in great need. And when all was over, and the shadow of Sauron was removed, he departed forever over the sea.
I don't think anyone has read that on the podcast in its 6 years, and I'm really glad you did.
It's a little obscure.
Well, it's great stuff, though. I remember how excited I was when I stumbled on the Unfinished Tales, and we're like, "There's more. There's backstory. This is incredible." And every chapter felt like hidden treasure. So thank you. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written, appropriate to the chapter because we've seen so much of Gandalf at his prickliest and his kindest all at once, and beautifully read. Thank you, Josh. Now, I hate to tear us away from the Hall of Fire here, but it's time for something rather different. That's right. It is now time for a little segment we like to call They're Taking the Hobbits to Isengard. All right, Josh, now is the time when, as you know, you get to play for absolutely no prizes, well, except boasting rights over your brother, which I guess counts. A game which will test whether you are a true Tolkien fan whom everyone should listen to, or whether we've just wasted almost 3 hours of everyone's time. The format here is well known to you, but for any new listeners, I'll outline the rules. Each of us will, in turn, read a quote from Tolkien's works, and the other has to tell who the speaker was. We can also earn bonus points if we can give the context, even if we miss the actual speaker, and those bonus points might just save us both. Context will get us half a point. Whether or not we get the speaker right, getting the speaker right gives us 1 point, so we can actually get 1.5 points if we get both context and the speaker. The rules for the quotations are, it has to be an actual quotation by an actual character, no narrator gotchas, no parentheses that show what was being thought. Has to be a full sentence or sentence fragments if that's all that's quoted, and it has to only be taken from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. There can be skullduggery because there are a lot of times when characters quote another character. Let the player beware. And yes, we will go back and forth. You have 2 quotations for me or 3, Josh?
I think just 2.
Okay, I have 3 for you. And if we get 3 or more points, we survive. If not, the Uruk-hai make a meal of us. Are you ready?
We shall see.
So I gave you the chance to pick a category, and you said, I just picked whatever I could find, which means your category also is no category. Anything goes. Just kidding. It'll be subsequent chapters. Quotes from subsequent chapters.
Okay.
So let the games begin. Because that's not much of a clue. All right. Quote number 1 for you. The wolf that one hears is worse than the orc that one fears.
Yet where the wolf howls, there are also the orc prowls. So I've got the context. This is in the next chapter in Holland. Let's see. Read it to me again.
The wolf that one hears is worse than the orc that one fears.
I can't remember who said it.
No shame in guessing.
I'm going to have to guess Gimli.
Oh, so sad. It's actually Boromir.
It is Boromir.
Who has been complaining about the very idea of going to Moria until all of a sudden the wolf howls, and then he says, "How far is Moria?"
And is it Aragorn that then says where the
where the warg howls, there the orc prowls,
right?
Which you remembered.
I got too clever, and I thought it couldn't be Boromir because you never see any wolves around Minas Tirith.
The men of Minas Tirith do not know what to do with wolves.
I outsmarted myself.
All right, so half a point for context. All right. For me.
Okay. There are some things that it is better to begin than to refuse, even though the end may be dark.
There are some things that it may be better to begin than refuse.
That it is better to begin than to refuse, even though the end may be dark.
Some things that it is better or may be better.
Is better.
Some things it is better to begin than refuse, even though the end may be dark. Oh boy. Great quote. I found myself also gravitating to, things that seem like proverbs. some things it may be better to begin than refuse, even though the end may be dark. Oh my word! And I would think it's something from this chapter, although but we've just read it, and I would remember. So it's nothing that we've done so far. I don't think it's anything in Moria or Lorien. Some things it may be better to begin than refuse, even though the end may be dark. It doesn't seem to fit anything at Rauros. I'm going to guess Theoden. I'll guess Theoden when he's being called to... No. I'm going to guess Gandalf talking to Theoden at Edoras, urging him to, start to go to war against Saruman again, even though it seems like it's going badly. I guess Gandalf at Edoras.
But it's a great guess, and you worked your way close, and then you overshot the mark a little bit for the context. So this is outside Fangorn, when they're Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are speaking with each other, and let's see, they're talking about the hobbits and how Elrond was against their coming, and Legolas says, but Gandalf was not. And Gimli says, but Gandalf chose to come himself, and he was the first to be lost. His foresight failed him. And then Aragorn says, and I meant to quote this actually, this first part, and I forgot to bring it up. The counsel of Gandalf was not founded on foreknowledge of safety for himself or for others, said Aragorn. There are some things that it is better to begin than to refuse, even though the end may be dark. But I shall not depart from this place yet.
So go ahead.
I meant to bring this up when Boromir was winning his horn.
Yeah.
The council, you don't decide what to do depending on what the outcome is for you.
Right. You do the right thing. I was just going to say, I'm glad because I said I would have guessed this chapter if I hadn't just read it and knew it wasn't there. So I feel relieved that it was actually a reflection on this chapter. All right, so no points for me, half a point for you. We may be in trouble. Let's see. All right, question. Quote number 2 for you. This is not a full sentence, but it is what appears between the first capitalization and a period. A great cave troll, I think, or more than one.
This one feels too easy, but I can't see the trap, if there is one. So I'm going to just go ahead and guess that this is Gandalf looking out of the chamber of Mazarbul, and he's just done the brief flash to see what's out in the corridor.
You are exactly right. The only reason it's a trap is because someone who's watched the movies is going to think it's Boromir.
Oh,
they have a cave troll.
Oh, of course.
So, perfect. Well done. And now we have 2 points, and we're just 1 point away from survival. So, go ahead and give me my next quote.
All right. I will not give you counsel, saying do this or do that. Sorry.
Initially I want to just say that, well, that's Gildor, because he says that, but I don't think that's actually what he says. He says the elves do not give counsel easily. And then Frodo makes his complaint. Yeah, they also say do not go to the elves for counsel.
Right.
So I will not give you counsel saying do this or do that. I'm going to guess Celeborn in Lothlorien when they're talking to him and reflecting on their next courses of action. Yeah.
Is that your
my final guess? It might be Galadriel, but Celeborn is supposed to. Well, fine. I'll guess Galadriel.
Okay.
Galadriel instead of Celeborn, because Celeborn is supposed to be the wisest, but again, the wisest thing he ever did was marry Galadriel and then do what she said. Unlike Thingol, who married Melian and then ignored everything that she ever said.
Right. So yes, that is it. I put this one in just because I thought it goes well with the theme of the cautious advice that Elrond and Galadriel give. And this is, so she says, even now there is hope left. I will not give you counsel saying do this or do that, for not in doing or contriving, nor in choosing between this course and another can I avail, but only in knowing what was and is and in part also shall be. And then, of course, you have to hear Cate Blanchett's voice. But this I will say to you, the quest stands upon the edge of a knife.
So it is not. So it is in the same place that I thought. It's there in their throne room. It's not later at the Mirror of Galadriel. All right.
Right.
Very good. All right.
Yeah,
Hey, I contributed and we survived, but and you still have one question left to do. I will say I hadn't processed that Galadriel also says something about not giving counsel, which maybe is a very circumstantial support for my headcanon theory that Gildor Inglorian is actually her elder brother, incognito, come back to Middle-earth, which the more I read it, I think it can't be, but I still like the thought.
It's a fun one.
All right. Okay. Your final question, and then we can go to bed. All right. There he stands, smiling in the sun.
That's Gimli talking about Caradhras.
Oh my gosh. I was sure you wouldn't get that. That's amazing. Okay, here's the context. Yonder is the Dimril Stair, said Aragorn, pointing to the falls. Down the deep cloven way that climbs beside the torrent. We should have come if fortune had been kinder, or Caradhras less cruel. There he stands, smiling in the sun. He shook his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks and turned away. Okay, you win great fame and glory for that, and for not even being in doubt. I thought you were gonna oh, that's someone looking at Aragorn on the Pelennor Fields or something. Wow, amazing.
I love that line where I quote that one too sometimes. If fortune had been kinder, or Caradhras less cruel.
There we go.
So
we got 5 points. The only you got just a half point on the first question, and I got no points on on my first question. But then we both knocked it out of the park the last 3. I'm not going to say we sent the Uruk-hai running in terror, but we definitely repulsed their attack. So good luck to them and Isengard. Saruman will not be happy.
And good for us not indulging in sibling rivalry and stooping to the kinds of things we would have done in our youth.
Yeah.
I will admit I pulled up some quotes that were just things like "I do," and
I looked at someone. I was like, "That's dumb. Let it be a memorable quote. Something worth remembering." So very good. All right, and with that, it's all we have for today, tonight, tomorrow, whatever day it is. Thank you, Josh, for co-hosting the Amon Sûl podcast with me today, for staying up late, for lending me your time, and for giving us the chance to actually talk about this again. I miss this from our childhood. I'm overjoyed every time we get to do it again.
Me too, and I'm grateful to you and to your listeners for putting up with me. We never get to do this except for on the podcast, so I look forward to it and I really enjoy it.
I was saying to Presetera, every month I have to think, is this actually worthwhile? Is this a good use of my time? And then I think, when else am I going to have a chance to actually have a social life, have conversations with friends about something meaningful? No one would just sit with me unscheduled and talk Tolkien for 3 hours and 10 minutes. But put it on a podcast and I can actually have these conversations. So this is a gift to me. I'm grateful to you and to everyone for allowing this to be a possibility. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, next time on Amon Sûl, I will be joined by longtime listener, first-time guest co-host, Spencer White, as we go beneath the earth and, for a little while, make Gimli a very, very happy dwarf. I'm also happy to announce on Father Andrew's behalf that Doxamut is back. It will be held September 4th through 6th, that's Labor Day weekend this year, at All Saints Orthodox Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. Registration is live now, and I believe it's still open through into, early mid-August at least. I couldn't find a deadline. You can claim your place so long as it is still open at ancientfaith.com/events/Doxamut. You can send your questions, comments, topic suggestions, or orcish ideas for their taking the hobbits to Isengard to me at amonsul@ancientfaith.com, or you can message me through the podcast Facebook page, or sure, send a YouTube comment. I do actually read them, and it's nice to have maybe the best YouTube comments on YouTube. We do also welcome guest co-host proposals, and we have the next year or so mapped out, but there's a lot of book beyond that. So if you have a chapter you'd like to discuss with us, please make a pitch. Lastly, we would love to receive more photograph submissions of candidates for Weathertop, so please keep sending those through.
If you want more of this kind of thing, subscribe to the Amon Sûl podcast on your favorite podcast app, and please rate and review. And look up the Amon Sûl podcast page on Facebook, click the follow button. Most of all, though, share with your friends. And while you're at it, if you appreciate this or other Ancient Faith media, go to ancientfaith.com/support and show some practical love.
We've been around since 2019. You can find our full back catalog of episodes by going to tolkienpodcast.com. Or you can just, subscribe on your local your local podcast app, which is to say the one that's already on your phone. The Amon Sûl podcast theme music is Hidden Past, and the closing theme is Celtic Impulse. Both of those are by Kevin MacLeod, whose music you can find at incompetech.com.
Our podcast cover art was created by Samuel Hebel. Our video editors/scouts ranging far and wide through all Eriador are Simon Nelson and Mike DeGan.
And special thanks go to the Amon Sûl Facebook group for conversation, inspiration, and sometimes being the quietest corner of Facebook, which is not a bad thing. I am your host, Father Anthony Cook, and even though Father Andrew considers reforging the podcast for himself once again, perhaps as Amon Kakalaki every time he hears me say how long the episode lasted, this has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.